I know you would not have.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock and time for the March 15th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County to begin. We're going to begin with an invocation by Scott Alexander of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Church of Vero Beach, followed by the pledge by Commissioner Tim Zork.
Let us please be one in spirit. Dear God, that reliable source of love and light and goodness in our world, help us to be our best selves this morning. May all of us keep in mind the inherent worth and dignity of every person who speaks or listens here. May every person this morning feel validated in their essential humanness by every interaction. We have an organization in this town called Compassion Vero. May that spirit live amongst us this hour. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Please place the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on, we go to additions and deletions to the agenda. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move my item 14B to 10.1A with the public speaking request.
Very good. Any other additions or deletions?
And, Mr. Chairman, mine's very similar, so we could
Yes.
just do them all together at
I
that
tend
point.
to think yours will be moot by the time we get to
Right.
it, so
I didn't want to be presumed.
understood.
Last time you just did it later.
Any other additions or deletions? All in favor? Oh, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Approved.
I'll give the motion to Commissioner Flesher, the second to Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We now go to proclamations and presentations. And the first is a presentation of a proclamation designated March 20th through March 26, 2016 as Florida Surveyors and Mappers Week. Commissioner Davis will present to David Schreier, if Mr. Schreier is in the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see several surveyor and mappers out there. If they want to come on up all as a collective group, taking time out of your schedule to be here, certainly like to, if you can find your way down.
The podium would be fine.
You like that? Thanks.
A couple of
Yeah.
seats here.
I think it went up over everybody else's head, but you got it?
Come on up.
Yeah, you go at a measured pace.
Oh, boy. You worked on that all week, didn't you?
Commissioner Davis, if you'd like to continue, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. This is a proclamation designated March 20th through 26, 2016 as Florida Surveyors and Mappers Week. Whereas surveyors and mappers are counted among the founding leaders of our country and were instrumental in the information of the layout of property boundaries in the United States, which have provided our citizens with the enjoyment of property ownership. And whereas George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and other former presidents of the United States served their fellow colonists as surveyors. And whereas the citizens of Florida recognize the valuable contributions of the surveying and mapping profession to history, development, and quality of life in Florida and the United States of America. And whereas, and make important decisions based on the knowledge and expertise of licensed surveyors and mappers. And whereas the surveying and mapping profession requires special education, training, this knowledge of the knowledge of mathematics and the related physical and applied sciences and requirements of law for evidence. And whereas surveyors and mappers are uniquely qualified and licensed to determine and describe land and water boundaries for the management of our natural resources and protection of private and public property rights. And whereas the continual advancement in instrumentation have required the surveyor and mapper not only to be able to understand and implement the methods of the past, but also to employ modern technology in finding solutions to meet the challenges of the future. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the board designates the week of March 20th through the 26th, 2016 as Florida Surveyor and Mappers Week, and recognizes the many contributions and the ongoing dedication of surveyors and mappers to the citizens of Indian River County, Florida, and the United States, adopted this 15th day of March 2016, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Gentlemen, welcome. Let's say a few words.
Thank you.
Thanks. My name's Dave Silon. I'm the Assistant County Surveyor. On behalf of the Indian River Chapter of the Florida Surveying and Mapping Society, I'd like to thank the board for recognizing the week of March 20th to the 26th as National Surveyors Week. Surveyors play a vital role in the development of our nation's infrastructure. All roads, public roads, state highways and interstates, as well as the roads in our subdivisions, were laid out by surveyors. In addition to road works, nearly anything that's built requires at least 2 surveys. Thomas Jefferson, while he's most famous for the drafting and ratification of our Constitution, it was his public land survey system that is still used by all states but the original 13 colonies in Hawaii, and as well as any newly developed nations within the last 100 years. They follow his survey procedures. In 1883, Abraham Lincoln accepted a job as the Assistant County Surveyor of Sangamon County in Illinois. And most of his surveying time has only lasted a few years. Most of his surveys were public land surveys, town lots, and a few private surveys. And just as a reminder, on this election day, if you ever see a land surveyor on the ballot for president, before you dismiss his or her qualifications, remember 3 of the 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore were land surveyors long before they made the United States the great country we know today. Thank you.
Was that an announcement?
Gentlemen, come right up here to the podium beginning, and then we'll get a picture.
Have a cold, guys. I don't want to get anybody sick. You guys work a dangerous job as it is. He's the only guy wearing a mask.
I'm doing great.
You got a cold.
My pleasure. Good. Richard, what's going on? Tonight?
That was nice.
Shift your line a little bit to the
lined up, I'll take back
the
through.
seal there. It'll make for a better picture.
Breathe the other way.
Y'all slide down a little bit.
Somebody pick the center line there. There you go.
Along the arc of.
Okay, you guys squeeze in a little bit, tiny bit more.
Oh, the guys in front or the people in the back?
Squeeze in. Now I've got it. Okay, ready? Survey.
Hey,
Okay,
everybody say plumb bob.
took a few.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for coming down.
We'll now move to a presentation of a proclamation recognizing March 22nd through April 3rd, 2016 as Save the St. Johns River Tour Campaign. And we have Lisa Reineman here to accept. Lisa, good morning again.
Good morning.
It's my great pleasure to read this proclamation recognizing March 22nd through April 3rd, 2016 as Save the St. Johns River Tour Campaign. Whereas the St. Johns is the longest river in Florida and one of our most important natural resources. The expansive watershed of the St. Johns and its tributaries drains nearly 16% of the state and is home to almost 5 million people. And whereas the St. Johns River faces significant threats from fertilizer runoff, failing septic tanks, toxic algal blooms, industrial pollution, surface water withdrawals, urban sprawl, and dredging. And whereas our river is at a critical crossroad with its future hanging in the balance, we must act now to raise awareness about the numerous threats to the river's health. And whereas, by touring the 310-mile length of the river from Blue Cypress Lake to Jacksonville, the St. Johns Riverkeeper and partners will highlight the people, wildlife, beauty, and recreational benefits that make the St. Johns worth fighting for. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that March 22nd through April 3rd, 2016, signifies the Save the St. Johns River Tour, and the board commends the St. Johns Riverkeeper for its robust campaign to improve the health of the river, adopted this 15th day of March 2016, and signed by all 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners. Good morning, Lisa. I'm sure you'll give us a lot of details about the great tour that's coming up.
Good morning, Chairman, and thank you, members of the Commission. I'm very proud to be here on behalf of the St. Johns Riverkeeper. While my title's Riverkeeper, I'm part of an organization. We're a nonprofit organization privately funded to give the St. Johns River an independent voice. I'm one of more than 270 waterkeepers around the world. There's 10 currently in Florida, including an Indian riverkeeper. And I'm proud to be here to announce that we are strategically, aggressively moving throughout the watershed. We have been around for 15 years, but we're located in Jacksonville, so we've been predominantly working in the lower basin of the river. The river flows north, so we've done most of our work in the lower basin where it meets the Atlantic Ocean in Bayport, Florida. However, for us to truly honor the St. Johns and all the citizens who rely on our river for recreational as well as economic benefits, we need to take a holistic approach and work with all elected officials as well as all members of the community who live along the banks of the St. Johns, her tributaries, and her springs. As you mentioned, it's a huge watershed. It's the second largest ecosystem in Florida next to the Everglades. It's more than 8,800 square miles, and we're making sure that we work with everyone to celebrate the St. Johns, her tributaries, and her springs, as well as to highlight the threats, the impacts. The only way we can advocate for solutions if we understand and address scientifically and technically the threats, and also have a call to action. We have members throughout the watershed, but if we're not working deliberately and strategically together throughout all the counties involved, we're not going to make any headway. And it's our goal to work ourselves out of a job by getting a healthy St. Johns, a healthy ecosystem, and be able to celebrate this river for future generations. Next Tuesday on March 22nd, we'll be launching this tour right over here at Middleton's Fish Camp. We'll be kayaking on Blue Cypress, as well as Dr. Baker from the Pelican Island Audubon Society will be leading a tour on Blue Cypress Lake. We'll be hiking in Fort Drum Marsh area, take a driving tour of many of the Water Management District conservation sites, including the Fellsmere Grade, and also having a dinner, which I'd like to invite you all to next Tuesday night at Marsh Landing. And then we'll be making our way downstream on the St. Johns over 13 days. I did provide a packet of information for you. If you'd like to join us on any piece of this journey, we'd invite you to do so. And we could also customize trips and tours and activities throughout this county anytime in the future, because this is just a beginning. We hope today is the beginning of a beautiful relationship to celebrate and save the St. Johns. And I thank you for honoring us today with this proclamation.
Lisa, I have a couple suggestions for a couple commissioners to join you next Tuesday morning. I'm not sure if they'll make it, though. And I thank you for coming here today. And if there's anything we can do to make your stay in that tour easier in the upper part of the basin, please let us know.
Most definitely. And I will send you an hour-by-hour account of what we're doing the first day in case you have some time to join us, as well as I'll stay in touch every time I come back. I've been coming down here regularly. We do have members in Indian River. There's a few, and we hope to have more, and we look forward to that building a good relationship.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Lisa, one question for you. I had looked at this earlier because next week is my wife's a school teacher and it's her spring break.
Yes.
So we had looked about taking our boat and coming along.
Oh, wonderful.
But you don't really do that until kind of actually into the following week. So I think it's out of our schedule. But where on the river from Vero Beach, where could I go to trailer my boat to launch in the river, then be able to go all the way to Jacksonville?
That depends on your boat. I mean, unfortunately, in the
So
headwaters,
it's a
there's a lot of
22-foot
channelizing, and we could definitely customize a route for you. But that's been one of the challenges. Like our boat, for example, we can't really get our boat in the river up till further to Sanford. And so what we're doing in this section is doing it section by section, going out on airboats, going out on smaller boats, going out on kayaks as well as pontoon boats, just trying to piecemeal it together. One of my desires someday is to do a through paddle and do the entire section. But if you wanted, the best place for this trip next week would be coming over to Blue Cypress. We'll be spending the entire day next Tuesday over there, and we could actually meet you at a certain time during that day.
Well, I was looking more just in the future, where would be the best place for me to launch to be able to run my boat north to Jacksonville?
I'll help you with that. Your boat, probably the best place is going to be Camp Holly on 192. just the size of it. Some of the old timers, they just for nostalgia purposes during the summertime, they'll put in a blue cypress and with a light boat, but they have to drag it across the structure right there.
But from Camp Holly, I can get everything's clear from there?
I believe so. Yeah, that's pretty good water comparatively speaking. Of course, you don't want to do it during the dry time of the year. Which we really haven't had one of those yet. But
It's
so,
pretty
Commissioner, you
wet
going to
out
join
there
Dr.
right
Baker
now.
on the tour?
I can't make it, no. But I was preparing for this yesterday. After church, I went out to the pontoon around the lake to make sure everything was in order, and it was absolutely spectacular. And I can attest that there was at least one dumb speck, one dumb brim, and one dumb catfish.
Excellent.
And then yesterday afternoon, went over to the East Marsh, which is did a little airboat ride. And it's amazing to me the people of Indian River County that have not had the opportunity to go out there and see this beautiful part of Indian River County, and especially over there on the East Marsh. Mainly airboats. It's interesting. They have little stops, in places where you can get out, and stretch your legs, and they're exactly 12 ounces apart from each other. And it's real fun. But it really is. Anybody that's never had the opportunity to go out there and enjoy this really is missing, to me, the most beautiful place in Indian River County.
It's a beautiful area. In fact, we'll be at Camp Holly on Wednesday of next week. So if you'd like to put in your boat at Camp Holly, and let you know the exact times, we'll be there next Wednesday morning. And that's what it's all about, is celebrating these beautiful places, encouraging folks. We've got people coming down to Jacksonville to see some of these spots. We've had people from here come up to Jacksonville and see some of the tributaries in that area. And that's what it's about, building those relationships and celebrating the entire ecosystem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with the event. Yeah, great. Thank you.
On the water.
Thank you very much.
Right here in the middle.
I had looked at it.
I gotta swim, I don't own a boat. Oh, no, I have a cold.
I was totally lost.
Thank you.
We now have a presentation of a proclamation designating April 15th, 2016 as Jackie Robinson Day. Commissioner O'Brien is going to present the proclamation to Michael Kint and Susan Adams. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. I think we need to change the name of this proclamation. It should be designating April 15th, 2016 as Jackie Robinson Day and Peter and Susan O'Brien's wedding anniversary. And I will say, God bless her, my lovely wife, for the third year in a row, we will be celebrating our wedding anniversary at historic Dodgertown. So it's I'm fortunate enough that she's willing to spend her anniversary watching a minor league baseball game, but she knows it's important. So this is a proclamation designating April 15th, 2016 as Jackie Robinson Day. Whereas April 15, 2016 will mark the 69th anniversary of Jackie Robinson making his major league debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers as he broke the color barrier in 1947 to become the first African American to play Major League Baseball. And whereas Jackie Robinson spent 9 spring trainings, 1948 through 1956, at Dodgertown, Vero Beach, and the Dodgers advanced to the World Series 5 times in those years. And whereas in 1948, Dodgertown became the first and only integrated spring training site in the South. And whereas Major and Minor League Baseball celebrate Jackie Robinson Day nationally each April 15th, and whereas Mr. Pat O'Connor, Minor League Baseball President and CEO, said, quote, "Minor League Baseball is proud to be a part of this annual celebration in Vero Beach as we play a game at historic Dodgertown to honor him." And whereas the 3rd annual Jackie Robinson celebration game will take place on Friday, April 15, 2016, in Holman Stadium when the Brevard County Manatees host the St. Lucie Mets to benefit a worthy cause, the United Way of Indian River County. And whereas The cost of this minor league baseball game is kept low so it can be a true community-wide celebration. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the board designates April 15, 2016 as Jackie Robinson Day, and hereby congratulates Major League Baseball on its work and success in Indian River County over the past 68 years. Adopted this 15th day of March 2016 and endorsed by all 5 commissioners. Michael, Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to be a part of this. You know, we do make some money on it, and that's a great thing, but when this opportunity arose, and we got a call from Craig Callan at Historic Dodgertown, my board said it's not about making money. We didn't even know if we would, but an opportunity to do something that felt right for the community and for families. We work hard to make sure that it is affordable. And it's also, when all is said and done, it's fun to be at Holman Stadium. It's great to be at Dodgertown. It's great to have an adult beverage and a Dodger dog and enjoy baseball at Holman Stadium. But it's a remembrance as well of a truly significant event. And you bundle that all together, it's something that can't be beat. My commercial ends with me saying tickets for this game will go on sale on March 28th. They'll be available at every Seacoast Bank in Brevard, in St. Lucie, and in Indian River County, as well as at Marine Bank. Tickets at United Way and Historic Dodgertown. And I say this because last year, the numbers are a little unofficial because of the way that the process is done. It'll be a little tighter this year, I hope. We had well over 5,000 folks there last year. This is a Friday night. Michael's already predicted that I think this is going to be a sellout. So if it's important to you to get back to Holman Stadium for a Dodger dog and to enjoy baseball that night, move quickly between March 28th and game day, because I think it's very likely we're going to have a sellout on this event this year. We thank you very much for your support. And actually, I think we're going to get proclamated again at the game. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bob,
Which
you're
is
going to
cool.
a sporting event?
At Dodgertown.
First Lynn Hall got me to actually volunteer and work the game,
Go to Dodgertown.
which I thought would be fine because I'd be able to be in shorts. And then I was told I'm going to have to give the proclamation again, which is a great pleasure, but now I'm going to have to wear long pants. So, unfortunately,
We're thankful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at least it won't cost you too many votes. Right?
Yeah, I think Michael's right. 2 years ago, the first game, I think it was about 3,500 folks there, and then kind of the word got out. And you're right, last year it was almost standing room only. It was packed.
We were close.
Yeah. Now, are you guys doing fireworks again this year?
We are. We're
Good, 'cause
delighted.
I keep telling my wife, I arranged that because of our anniversary. So.
It's just for you. To keep you
Exactly.
out of
That'll be our
trouble.
secret. Okay, don't tell Susan. Just okay.
I'd be happy to announce that when I give out the proclamation.
But again, truly, we thank you for the recognition. We look forward to having you with this commissioner
forward to being there.
on the night. So
You know, this game is the one game that, and I heard it frequently last year, we got Dodgertown back. And it's just a great experience, and the people are excited, and it's just a wonderful, I do believe it'll be sold out. I just want to point out one thing. I was recently watching some young individuals coming and training at Historic Dodgertown, and I was watching one of the young players. He was walking like a penguin, and he was just stepping around, and I was, what is he doing? And he said, he's trying to get his footprints exactly where Jackie Robinson stood.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just so magical, that we don't appreciate so much. And people that come to Historic Dodgertown know that that is the home for Jackie Robinson's legends. So.
And if Craig was here, I
This
know
is
that
just great.
he'd reference too. There's been some nice work, some refurbishment of
the seats.
great many seats in the stadium. So I mean, nice improvements have been done. So it's all good again. We thank you so much, and we look forward for our second proclamation on this at the game.
They look beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Good.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, boss.
The budget we could print too.
Thanks.
Thank you once again.
We will now move to the presentation on Indian River Twisted Tail Barbecue Cook-Off Event to benefit the Vero Beach Rotary Charities Foundation by Russell Twist, Event Chairman of the Rotary Club. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen, for entertaining us this morning. I wanted to tell you briefly about
If
our
you would,
event.
your name and address for the record. Just so
Oh,
we get
yes.
you correct.
It's Russell Twist, and I'm the chairman of the Indian River Twisted Tail Barbecue Cook-Off.
Thanks.
Thank you for entertaining us, gentlemen. Good morning. And I wanted to tell you briefly about our event, which will be held at the Indian River County Fairgrounds. And the event will be sanctioned by the Kansas City Barbecue Society, the largest international barbecue sanctioning body in the world. It will be held on April 1st and April 2nd from 5 o'clock in the evening until 10 o'clock on Friday night, and then 10 in the morning until 5 at night on Saturday. We'll have live entertainment, including bands both days, and there'll be children's activities and fun for the entire family. But what we would like to also say is that we are very grateful to the entire county staff of the Fairgrounds, especially Deputy Administrator Zito, David Fleetwood, Beth Powell, Jillian Sparks, and all the rest of the staff at the Fairgrounds. The excellent quality of the facility proves to make this an outstanding event. This will benefit the Vero Beach Rotary Charities Foundation, which is focused on serving charities in Indian River County, and our primary beneficiary this year is the Boys and Girls Club of Indian River County. So we greatly thank you for allowing us the use of the facility, which is an excellent facility. And I have Danielle Formont, our volunteer chairman, here as well, to give each of you a volunteer t-shirt, and we would ask for your support if you would like to come out at some point and make an appearance at our event or volunteer. We'd very much appreciate it. So
I'd rather have
thank you
barbecue.
all for entertaining us.
So
Well,
while you're-
what do we have to do as a volunteer? Would you like us to handle the crowd? You'd like us to cook? You'd like us to sample?
2XL in there, Daniel?
We need a little enticement
Got one
here.
this size?
Well, there'll be some food.
It's a great cause,
involved.
but-
There'll be drinks involved. So,
Whatever you need us to do.
Thank you so much.
Oh, we can
So-
judge?
Try to get into a
Well,
small Daniel, I'm
unfortunately, the
telling you.
judges are all certified by the
Certified
Kansas City
judges.
Barbecue Society.
very much.
So
I've
those
been
have all been
practicing.
signed up in advance, and they'll be
Daniel.
coming throughout the country, as will our competitors. But we'll need help with serving refreshments.
I can't see what it says.
We certainly will need a bit of help with directing people and saying hello, so.
So Daniel will find us a job.
Certainly, if you'd like to come out, we will find you a job, and a prominent one.
Love working with him.
Terrific, thank you,
You got a
sir.
large?
No, I have a large.
I'll swap you.
Yeah, I can do it. I'm not giving it to you.
Let us know, and we'll put it on our website so that people can see as an event. Talk to Scott, we'll get all your information, make sure it's on the county website.
Terrific, I believe it is, thank you.
Just real quick, explain
that
how
much.
it works. And so if somebody shows up, obviously you want them to show up hungry,
Yes.
and they will buy a wristband, or they just go around and buy barbecue?
Well, they just go around. The only charge is for parking. It's $5 per vehicle.
Okay.
But then there's no admission charge. And there'll be vendors from throughout the country that will be selling barbecue, and other vendors as well selling other things, but primarily barbecue vendors and other food vendors. And then there'll also be alcohol on sale,
Okay.
as well as water and other soft drinks. And folks can
That's where the wristband
walk
comes in.
around and
Okay.
purchase whatever they'd like. They can listen to the Tom Jackson Band on Friday and the Crooked Creek Band on Saturday,
You got
among
Sheldon
other
out there, good.
live entertainment. so
entertainment?
Yeah.
Should be quite entertaining.
So after the winner, when will the winner be named?
Well, the judging will take place midday on Saturday. So
Okay.
it will be 30-minute turn-in times for each of the 4 meat categories for professionals.
Which
will
are?
be chicken, pork ribs, pork, and beef brisket.
Okay.
And then they're each turned in 1/2 hour after one another in a 9x9 container to be judged by 6 judges at a time. And then The results will be announced at approximately 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
On Saturday?
And- Yes.
Okay.
And there's a $10,000 professional prize pool and a $2,000 amateur prize pool. The amateur division will just consist of chicken and pork ribs,
Okay.
but should be well attended. We already have over 20 teams signed up, and we anticipate more to come. So
This sounds like some serious barbecue.
Oh, they take it there. Yeah, buddy.
And you know, I'm
People
noticing
coming
these
from as
Rotary
far away
guys
as
are all
Wisconsin.
focused on food.
Absolutely.
We got the,
On the barbecue professional guys, you have the backyard guys and you have the professional. Some will vend, some will sell to the public, others don't. So you have both.
Well, we won't know then if the winner, if I wanted to taste the grand champion brisket, I won't be able to go over and buy a plate of brisket necessarily, but I might be able to.
you might be able to,
Depends
but
if
you
there's
probably won't know who the winner is
Right.
until Saturday. So.
So you just have to try them all.
But if we
Commissioner.
buy
can just
all
see
of
that.
them,
Yeah.
Exactly. Then you'll know.
or you can try them on and tell the judges where they were wrong.
Well, that sounds great, guys. Good luck with it.
Thank you so much. And again,
And what's
those
the
dates are-
contact number to schedule to, if we want to volunteer?
772-205-9324.
Is that your cell phone, Danielle?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
You got it.
I got it.
And April 1st and April 2nd are those dates, Joe. So,
Excellent.
thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
No pictures. We will now move to a presentation on Veterans Golf League and American Security Council Foundation 2016 Heroes Appreciation Golf Tournament. This will be by Gary James, Director of Operations of the American Security Council Foundation. Good morning, Mr. James.
Good morning, sir. My name is Gary James, Director of Operations with the American Security Council Foundation. I'd like to thank you all for letting me speak to you today about our golf tournaments, several of them coming up. I'd like to take a second, if I may, too, to thank Mr. Bayard for his years of service to Indian River County. I know he's getting ready to retire, and congratulations, sir. In 2012, the American Security Council Foundation hosted its first golf tournament in Indian River County. The funds from that tournament went to purchase the 2 buses that you see traveling up and down the highway from Indian River County to West Palm Beach, Florida. They're all painted up with American flags with the logos of the 5 services and whatnot on there. After that year, we were looking for another way to something to do with the money. So we decided to start a scholarship program. So in 2013, we started the Step Up America Scholarship Program, and all funds raised from our golf tournaments go out to Indian River County High School, Vero Beach High School, and Indian River County Charter High School. This year, we're having our tournament on, it was actually moved from January the 9th. It's now on April the 16th at Bent Pine. Registration's at 12 o'clock. The tournament starts at 1:30. The price to play in a tournament is $125. That gets you your golf, your cart. We have a catered lunch by Ben Pine, then we have an awards ceremony afterwards. It's a very nice tournament. If you've never played Ben Pine, it is a private course. I think they charge a non-member $150 to play there. So for $125, you can come out and play with us. You can support the scholarship program. I will tell you that 100% of the proceeds from our scholarship, from our tournament, goes to the scholarship program. We're accepting scholarship applications right now, and actually today is the cutoff day. After today, if the kids that apply, they have to be either the children of veterans, active duty military, first responders, or law enforcement members in Indian River County. So I think it's a very nice tournament. The money goes back to some good kids, and I would say that one of our board members, Mr. Johnson, is in attendance today, and last year he actually presented a scholarship at Indian River County Charter High School. Again, that's the Heroes Appreciation Golf Tournament, and you can contact us at 772-388-2490 if you have any questions about that. Secondly, we've started. There was a lot of talk about veterans, and you always hear about the guys have problems, they have PTSD, they have this or they have that, they don't want to get out of the house. So I talked to Bella Nagy over at Sandridge, and we thought about having a Veterans Golf League, or trying to start a Veterans Golf League. We didn't know if it would work, we didn't know how it would work, or anything else. We did decide to give it a shot. So on April the 7th at Sandridge, we're starting the Veterans Golf League. So every Thursday night at 5 o'clock, they can come out, veterans can come out and play 9 holes of golf with a cart for $15. At the end of the year, end of October, we're going to have a tournament, and if they played 5 times during that time from April the 7th to the end of October, they can play in the tournament. So it's just a way to get the guys out, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that today so we can get it on the record. We can try and get it out to more of the veterans in the county about what's taking place. If you have any questions.
Nope.
Mr. James, first I'd like to thank you very much for having the golf tournament and for serving the veterans the way you do. We all on this board certainly appreciate that. But I have one other question.
Sir.
Could you please tell me Mr. Johnson's handicap?
Large.
We know it's double digits at least. But,
I think I'd leave Mr. Johnson to answer that question. I don't want to.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Davis.
Yes, just real quick. You know, what was so neat about the golf tournament last year was the amount of the young veterans that y'all were able to reach out to that actually really, I'm confident, do not know about the services that y'all provide. And, you know, we do fund the Veterans Council, but y'all take the dollars that we fund, and y'all amplify their value and their use exponentially. And
well, one thing, Wesley, I will say now, the Veterans Council golf tournament and our golf tournament are separate.
Separate, no, but I'm talking about
but all the money does go
Yes.
back into the veteran community. Again, everything that we do as the American Security Council Foundation, that money goes back 100% into the scholarships.
No, I understand that, but I was just in awe whenever I saw these, you know, kids.
Right.
That had served our country and could come out there, and so some of them you could tell had some battle scars.
Oh, and there are a lot.
Yes, and it was moving for me to be out there just to see it.
On that point, I believe the Veterans Council is actually hosting their golf tournament, if I'm not wrong. I think it's June 18th this year, and that'll be at Sand Ridge also.
Super.
So.
Y'all do so much. Everybody does so much for our veterans, as they should.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the support. Gentlemen, again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gary.
Any questions or anything I can answer? Or all good? Thank you.
We now have the presentation to United Way of Indian River County by Amy Boyson, Community Affairs Manager of Waste Management, Inc. Is Ms. Boyson here?
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and staff. I am Amy Boyson, Community Affairs Manager at Waste Management, and I'm pleased to be here today with an exciting announcement. Waste Management strives to be a good corporate citizen. Every day I come to work, I have the honor to work with nonprofit organizations and the communities that we service to be involved with events that help communities safer, stronger, better, and more fun. Today, we are pleased to present a $25,000 check to United Way of Indian River County. I had the opportunity to meet and work with the United Way staff a few times over the past several months, and I quickly learned that they truly are a great team of individuals and have the best interests at heart for the citizens of this community. I am confident these dollars will be used to better Indian River County. We are also excited to be a sponsor of the upcoming Jackie Robinson Celebration game on April 15th. You will see a familiar face at the pitcher's mound to throw out the first pitch of the game. He could not be here today, so I'm certain he's at home practicing. Thank you for this opportunity to present this check, and we look forward to a long-lasting partnership with United Way of Indian River County, as well as other organizations in the community. I have been in conversations with the Vero Beach Air Show as well, and we're excited to be a partner with them and do some exciting things. So with that, I would like to present this $25,000 check to United Way.
All right.
Hate to see the deposit slip.
Can we get a picture with you all as well?
Sure.
Dying to get Peter sick.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you. Again? Getting regular up here. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you again.
Sorry again, Susan. I'm sorry about that.
Shift a little to your right.
Yeah, step down to the right a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. Michael, you can never think.
Yes.
Check in front of the monitors because it didn't show up.
Oh, okay.
You guys have to stand up again, sorry.
We'll do it again.
Check in front of the monitors.
Thanks for that direction, Jackie.
Sorry, that was Tom.
This is what happens when Michael say 2 words.
In front of the monitors.
In front of the monitor.
Yeah. There you go. That's it. Ta-da.
Hold it.
That works. There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Michael, you still want to say those 2 extra words?
And we all know I can't do it in 2. Thank you would do that. Truly. We've got a great team, as you all know, that work hard on an annual basis. I've got 7 outstanding, the sensational 7 chairs this year, all of whom have real jobs and other opportunities. They would love to have been here. But these dollars are going into our campaign this year, and it is greatly appreciated. And it's not insignificant. I mean, outside of Publix, who everybody knows is the #1 supporter of United Way throughout the state of Florida and everywhere that they exist. This is the largest corporate gift that we've received in our campaign this year, so that's not insignificant. So we appreciate very much Waste Management making that donation to us and to the community. It will do a lot of good. We thank all of you for the opportunity today to receive and the facilitation of this as well. So thanks so much, and thank
Michael,
you to
your
them.
2 words is just about the same as my fellow commissioner.
Well, and I'm not a politician. Thanks,
Why
guys.
did you point this way? I thought you'd point that way.
We'll now move to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 16th, 2016.
So moved.
The motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. On information items, I would like to pull the one item that's there. It's a community dune planting event.
Yeah.
At the Treasure Shores Beach Park and Tracking Station Beach Park on March 19th, 2016. Volunteers from Keep Indian River Beautiful, Friends of the Archie Carr Refuge, and Surfrider Foundation will be planting 20,000 sea oak plants along the dunes, along the Treasure Shores and Tracking Station Public Beach Parks on Saturday, March 19th, 2016, from 8:30 till noon. I think that's a great thing. Mr. Gray, you're to be commended for your part in organizing this. And since you're there, if you'd like to say a few more words about it, it'd be great.
Yes, for the record, James Gray, County Coastal Engineer. A healthy coastal ecosystem is important to Indian River County, as with all locations along the coast. Dune vegetation is a vital part of that healthy coastal ecosystem, as it enhances dunes naturally, collects sand, and so forth. This event is actually focused as a public educational event as well, where we try to educate the public, the community, on the importance of dune vegetation. Currently we have about 50 volunteers already signed up for this between the 2 parks, so we're excited. If we have extra volunteers, which we're always wanting to encourage the public to come out, perhaps we can do a beach cleanup as well. So this Saturday we plan to have a very eventful activity at our 2 public beach parks.
And if I could ask you one question. So 20,000 plants, roughly how many linear feet of beachfront will you need to put down that many?
What we've calculated so far is approximately 1,000 linear feet will, at about a 25-foot width, will be what we'll be restoring.
Oh, great. I hope you have a great day and hope you get some more volunteers.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, anybody here want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item E.
Anything else? I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to pull anything from the consent agenda. Accept the motion to approve as amended.
Approval as amended.
Second.
We have the motion from Commissioner Flesher, the second from Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And we'll move to item E, Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If Bill DeBraw would like to step forward, this is a request for the use of Holman Stadium for the annual Sawbones versus Jawbones event. And Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit what you guys are doing?
Every year, good morning, Commissioner, and thank you. Bill DeBraw on behalf of the Indian River County Bar Association. Every year, the Bar Association challenges the doctors to a charity softball game held at Holman Stadium. Last year, we suggested that maybe the doctors brought in some ringers and beat us up pretty bad. This year, we're hoping to bounce back against the good medical community and make a better showing of ourselves. But we have the game, I believe it's starting at 1 o'clock, and it's a good time. We take a donation for people coming out, and all the proceeds go to the United Way. So they're the benefactor of our folly, perhaps? I don't know. But thank you for giving me a
Bill,
chance.
are you guys bringing your own ringers this year, or how are you handling this?
We're open to all options. Open to all options. We'll consider anything that we can do without bending the rules too badly.
Great.
Bill, what was the date? I heard you say the time, but the date.
It's on the 14th.
Great.
May 14th.
It's a great day, and it's always great to see our doctors and counselors battling it out. I just don't know why that anomaly happened last year, because, I mean, I think the threat of a suit should outweigh the threat of injury.
I think it's the threat of injury that affects us the most as we get a little bit older, but thank you very much.
But it's a great day. It's a great day. We'll
it's
be
a lot
there.
of fun.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to move approval.
Second.
We've got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We move on to non-constitutional officers and government agencies. We have an item to use proceeds from public auction of surplus property and vehicles to acquire new like-kind property within the current fiscal year.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Fleischer, a second from Commissioner Zork. Mr. Sheriff, we thank you very much for coming.
Thank you
All
for
in
your
favor?
time.
Aye. Passes 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thank you. We now move to public discussion items, and at the same time, based on the change to the beginning agenda, we'll follow this immediately with Commissioner Fletcher's matters dealing with the same item. So this is a request to speak by Reverend Scott W. Alexander regarding Martin Luther King holiday as an official county holiday. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, gentlemen. I've got a few friends with me today. We are a diverse group of leaders here in Indian River County who've come before you today to urge you to vote at your earliest opportunity to include the National Martin Luther King Day Junior holiday on the list of holidays officially recognized and observed by our county and all its employees. It is with concern that we note that Indian River County is the only county in the entire state of Florida that does not already do so. All the other 66 counties long ago joined the rest of the nation in observing this important national holiday signed into law by President Reagan in 1984 with overwhelming support of both Republicans and Democrats in both houses of the United States Congress. We believe the time is long overdue for our county to join the rest of the nation in this important observance and thus allow all of our county's citizens of all races and communities to come together to both honor and celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's vision of an America where there are equal rights and human dignity for all. As we are sure all the commissioners already understand, Martin Luther King Day is already celebrated throughout the county with parades and picnics and other festivities. It is only fitting and right then that the county fully and respectfully recognizes and observes this national holiday. In a word, this national holiday fully recognized will bring our community together in so many positive and purposeful ways. The good news is that, and this was drawn to our attention by the union representatives who we talked to about this, that because all the constitutional offices in the county already observe the holiday and because all the other county employees are already paid for this day. The only quote-unquote new cost to the county involved in expanding this holiday to all its, extending this holiday to all its employees, aside from the lost productivity of that day, whatever that might be, is the time and a half overtime pay that would go to those essential employees who would need to report for duty on that day. So the costs of this are not in any way onerous. So in conclusion, we urge you to vote as soon as your schedule permits to ensure that Martin Luther King Jr. National Holiday can be fully recognized and joyfully celebrated here in Indian River County for the first time on Monday, January 16th, 2017, which is MLK Day, of course, next year. Thank you for your attention. I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. Well, the fastest way to move this up would probably be to let you stay there, but bring up Commissioner Fletcher's item.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I appreciate the effort in consolidating all this together. As ill as I am today, I wanted to make sure I was here because I believe this deserves a 5-0. That's the very purpose.
Great.
In our first discussion, we looked at this, and I think I brought it up, that there are entities that interview us as we're seeking re-election, and they discuss that should we have this day off? And the first answer is, well, there is a floating day, and that day is used for that purpose. And in checking the records, there's many individuals that utilize that day as their floating holiday. But there's a problem with that. It's not dedicated. And we already have the loss of productivity because half of the population believe we're closed anyway. Right. And we see a reduction here, and then we have 50% of the staff taking off. But the most important thing is we're sending the wrong message. This is a national holiday. 66 counties have recognized this as a lawful holiday, and they have off for it, and it just makes perfect sense. The challenge that we discussed was that, we have bargaining units that this has to be discussed with them. It would be nice, although we just missed this past Martin Luther King Day, Dr. Martin Luther King Day. So in order to do that in the most efficient way, and yes, you brought up the cost factor, on first blush, to give everyone off, yeah, we can come up with a number that's rather onerous, but most of those individuals already have off. And we have the floating day, taking all into consideration, the hard cost and the soft cost. Joe tells me that we're looking at about $80,000 to make something right. And just to have this as the dedicated day that it deserves to be. And then many more people can participate in festivities, and those essential service personnel that have to be on duty will also be compensated for it as well. And I think it's most appropriate. The way we have to do that is I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to enter this discussion into all of the bargaining unit discussions for the coming year, and also earmark the funding necessary at our up-and-coming budget hearings so that we will have everything in place to make 2017 happen.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Fletcher, a second from Commissioner O'Brien. And just for the record, I'll note that the motion from Commissioner Fletcher, second from Commissioner O'Brien, is under item 14B1, Commissioner Fletcher's matters. Commissioner Zorc.
Yes, and with that analysis, I would, since I do see the union president here, so I'm sure they're keenly wanting to figure out what impact it is to their, we would break it down by department, the accumulated cost. I just did some quick math, and you had a number of 80,000. I came up with about 20,000 for the fire union side, if the numbers I used are correct. But just so the public knows what we're putting behind this to make this happen. And I am in favor of the recognition and the analysis that would go along with it.
And I'll ask if there's anybody else from the public who wishes to speak on this item. be no. Commissioner O'Brien?
Yeah, just when we do open this up with the bargaining units, from my point of view, I want to make it very clear that this is nothing that we really need to negotiate. It shouldn't be used as a bargaining chip. It shouldn't be used as leverage.
Right.
I think it should take about 45 seconds. We'll open up this article. Do you want the holiday? Yes. We close it. We're done, and that's it. It shouldn't be a protracted.
I think in language, I don't think it'll be that hard, because in the language it says that they get all the paid holidays other employees do. So
Right.
this would be just adding this
Right.
to paid holiday.
Like I said, this should take 30 seconds.
And that's okay. We're okay with that.
In my
If you
opinion.
so wish.
John O'Connor, President IFF Local 2201. I echo Commissioner O'Brien's comments. We're in acknowledgement of it, and we don't oppose the change. We appreciate working with staff, and we'll get it done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got another one from the public coming up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Name and address for the record, please.
Wilfred Hart, Vice President, 617 19th Place Southwest, Vero Beach.
Wilfred, you said
yes,
Vice
sir.
President, but Vice President
Vice
of-
President of the Martin Luther King Birthday Committee of Indian River County.
Thank you.
And on behalf of our committee, first of all, we just want to thank you for bringing up the discussion. Brother Fletcher, we want to really appreciate that. And we also want to thank Mr. O'Brien for bringing that discussion up too. And this is what I see on the flyer here. It would be really nice to see a 5-0 vote on this. And Mr. O'Brien, look in your eyes. First of all, I would tell you happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you. And hopefully we'll see you at the
Secondly,
game.
I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you that if you vote yes, Indian River County would really have a clear understanding that this committee, this commission is really behind of this organization of getting the Martin Luther King as a national holiday in this community. So if you vote yes, we'll all be jumping. And I want to tell you thank you.
And I've already seconded it, so I think it's pretty clear where I'm going on this.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I think we can count real quick on this one.
Mr. Hart,
Yes, sir.
I just want to say thank you as well, and see Dad's in the audience.
Yeah, he's been waiting for this for a long, long time.
Yep.
He's 85, and I know he's going to be very excited when this is completed. So
Yes,
again,
and I want to
thank
say, you
You're
need to
retiring,
thank
and
this
hear about
group
you, and God
of
bless you, too.
individuals that came to us, because I guess they were so compelling that 2 commissioners put it on the agenda as an agenda item, and that hasn't happened since 2006. That was myself and Wesley Davis. So it's a long time ago. 10 years.
Mr. Wolf, good morning, welcome. Name and address for the record, please.
Freddie Woolfolk, 4590 57th Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida. I'm just happy to be an Indian River County resident. In these last couple of years, I've seen a lot of great change take place, not only in this commission chambers, but also in the Indian River County in total. And that change is about recognizing diversity, recognizing our strength, recognizing that we together can continue to enhance the way of life here in Indian River County. And this proposal to make the national holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. birthday, a national holiday, is one more piece in that puzzle. Sending a message not by lip service. My grandma used to tell me all the time, everybody got lip service, but we don't have enough people with hip service. And hip service is doing and putting into action what you're talking about. And I've seen that happen over and over as I stood at this podium many times before, that the county commission is one who listens and look out for the welfare and the well-being of all citizens here in Indian River County. So the Martin Luther King Birthday Committee that put on the event every year in the county, I'm sure would be very appreciative. The people in Indian River County and the people from the Unitarian Church who came forth this morning, that is great, but I just couldn't allow just the Unitarian Church to voice their appreciation for considering this great move of making this a national holiday. On behalf of the Progressive Civic League of Gift of Florida, Inc., as well as other citizens here in Indian River County, we say thank you in advance, and we hope to receive that 5-0 vote very soon. Thank you so much.
I know he looks like a Unitarian, but he's actually a Lutheran. And many of the other congregations in town.
The whole group.
Commissioner Zork.
Yes, one other item, and I don't know if the folks, when we met with them, a couple questions that they asked, but one that stood out is they wanted to know why would I be supporting this? And I said, to help communicate to the Gifford community and the entire community that this is an important recognition of a man who played a very important part in our history. And I think this helps add to building the bridge to better relations with the community as a whole. So I'm very happy to support this today.
Anybody else from the public? Any other questions from the commissioners?
Just want to make sure, since my birthday's on January 16th, I don't have a conflict, do I?
And before we take the vote, I just want to recognize that Mr. Victor Hart Sr. is in the audience. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Hart for all the work that he's done for Gifford, and to say that among all the men I've met in this community, he's one of the finest, and I appreciate everything he's done. Thank you.
We have a room full of Hart. We also have Donald Hart as well.
Oh, you know, not so much on Donald.
Don.
But gentlemen, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. We will move on now to General Services, request for approval of revised Fairgrounds policy template festival license agreement. And for this, we have Mr. Zito. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Zito, Assistant County Administrator. It's been a while since we've had a chance to focus on the Indian River County Fairgrounds. I think last time I can recall was Commissioner Davis giving staff a challenge to increase the level and quality of activities at our fairgrounds, and since then
Of
we've
which, Rob, I
engaged.
want to say y'all have stepped it up.
Thank you, sir.
That's a compliment.
Yes. So, and with me today, or at least in the audience, is Beth Powell, our Conservation Lands Manager, who has stepped up, and David Fleetwood, who is our Park Superintendent. And Beth has been able to step up during David's recent absence and has been an integral part of this process. So we have before you, as promised a few months ago, the Budget Department tasked the risk manager to bring forth an interim item with respect to insurance requirements, and we promised at that time we'd come back with a comprehensive policy. We had not had any policy. This is an original document, an original proposal before you today. We did have a set of fairgrounds rules, but not codified into a workable policy. But just a little bit of background. As you know, we have some very nice amenities at the fairgrounds, including our agricultural pavilion, where much of the 4-H activities take place, including our own Indian River County Firefighters Fair happening this week. Our expo building, which you see depicted in the photo, and our open-air pavilion. Of course, we have the Midway acreage that the pavilion overlooks, and an RV campground with 48 campground sites. A little bit of history from 2006 to 2010. We had a total revenue of $372,900. In the next 5 years, that's increased now to $481,200. And where do we? Yes, sir.
A question on this. I see at the bottom it says does not include firefighters' fair revenue. Is that the revenue sharing model that we have with them?
Yes,
or
sir.
is that
We operate that relationship under a separate agreement.
Okay.
And as you know, the firefighters come back every year and present the county with a check according to the formula.
Right.
That they split the proceeds, and Jason takes good care of that money in the Fairgrounds Improvement Fund, and all of it goes back into the fairgrounds.
Does that agreement ever come up for a?
It is due this year.
Okay.
Fact, I believe in the fall.
All right, great. Thank you.
You know, Mr. Zito, I just want to make sure the public is aware that, I mean, you mentioned Beth Powell and David Fleetwood and Mike Redstone and Jillian Sparks and yourself. That's only part of your role and responsibility. This is a collateral responsibility. I mean, again, we hear accolades. It's working wonderfully, but most jurisdictions have a dedicated fairgrounds team?
To this point, we've been able to operate the fairgrounds without dedicated employees on site. Of course, the parks facility is just a few hundred yards away, and it's operated, both the business and maintenance functions are operated out of the parks division. It's been working. I think some of the trending we're seeing may have to be addressed going forward, and we'll have those discussions internally with county administrator. But that's right now, we're on top of it.
Sure. I just wanted to point out that we get constant accolades and thanks for the team, whether it be our end user or the organizations that are engaging, and they're very appreciative of what's happening out there, and they're seeing the growth and the positive energy that's going into it by you all.
Thank you, thank you. So moving ahead, this year, 2016, these are fiscal year totals. So you have your two averages from the previous slide in the blue and orange, and you'll see they advance from 74 to 96. This year we're tracking approximately $115,000, and that figure is actually revenue collected already and actual scheduled tangible events. So you see the 76,459 figure is received in this fiscal year, and then the 38 plus is scheduled that have tendered deposits. So if they all follow through with their events and pay their expected fees, we'll trend toward $115,000 in revenue, and that does not include events that we have yet to book. For example, the Vero Beach Prom, they haven't booked, but we know they're coming. They come every year. Or the alcohol revenue that's going to be presented to you in a formula later on in this presentation, and it doesn't include the RV camping. So the point is, things are trending upward. In the first 2 months of this calendar year, you can see the events at the fairgrounds, and the total at the bottom is probably one of our best years in recent memory. And there's some of the examples of the actual events that we can, and a diversity of events that we can host at the fairgrounds, including weddings and sporting events and incidental stage rentals and the like.
Michael, was there, at the recent prayer breakfast, they had a very unique and different way of enclosing the open pavilion area? And those curtains, were theirs or they ours? Or, because I've never seen it, they actually took an outdoor pavilion and created a complete indoor environment, which really opens you up to a completely different set of rental opportunities.
Well, thank you. Very nice segue, Commissioner. This is the prayer breakfast, and what you see there is a portable and removable enclosure that we can offer to other events. And to turn the open air pavilion, which is our largest venue, it holds more than the expo building itself, and will hold more than the intergenerational gymnasium. So we were very happy to be able to host that size of an event, and they did bring along the coverings, but have asked us to store them. So we're talking about that arrangement right now, but they will be available for other events. And we just feel it's best to have them store them and then have the event makers approach them in terms of renting them, so we don't have dominion and control over something that's not a county asset, but they are available.
I'd like to add to that, there's a way, I've seen it, I've seen air-conditioned tents. And if there's a way of finding whomever can put an AC unit to that,
yes, sir,
that would be very impressive as far as being able to offer that
yes,
year-round.
Of course, the time of year this event was quite comfortable.
I
know you were in
how
attendance.
comfortable it was, yeah, and I agree. It was.
Sunbelt has those big trailers they'd park in the back, and it would bring the AC through one.
Sunbelt Rentals?
We used them during the hurricanes when we used the fairgrounds as a facility. You all got the
air conditioning?
Portable units, yeah.
Okay.
So I mentioned the events that were our two best months, January, February. These are the events that are booked as backup for the previous slide to show you what we're expecting from March through September that have actually tendered deposits.
That Golden Grad is neat. That's anybody that's graduated from Vero Beach High School more than 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to have a good auctioneer
Almost
this
there,
year.
Wesley.
What's that?
Almost there.
Not quite. My mom is for the first time this year, though.
Now, I should say, some of these events may be attractive to the IG Center, and that's great, because now we have options. But most of the groups seeking events at the fairgrounds would not be attracted to the IG because of the acreage, the parking, the size of the facilities.
Just as we move forward with this, I'm going to say something out of the playbook of historic Dodgertown. Perhaps, hopefully, we just get to the point where we can start naming the days that it's not being used, like they have it at Dodgertown.
I hope so. Well, always on our county website, if you click on your events calendar, you can not only see the fairgrounds at a glance, but you can see every facility in the county, including Dodgertown. Okay. So once again, we've developed this policy with our fairgrounds in mind. It's not a cut and paste from a bunch of other policies. It's something that we workshopped in-house for a couple of months, had some pretty vigorous debates, blended in some compliments and some complaints that we've received from event makers, tried to anticipate conflicts, tried to balance large event makers with smaller events and historical events and tradition. And it does call for some flexibility in the management of the fairgrounds, but to the extent we can codify a policy and a hard rule, we have done so. So some of the substantive highlights in the policy. The full policy is attached in your agenda item, but these are some of the highlights. Of course, you well know what got this started was the requirement of acceptance by the risk manager of all insurance certificates, naming the county as additional insured 30 days prior to the event. We did have to go to a little more formal reservation system because of some of the competition we've been receiving for dates, and that includes a 25% deposit of estimated facility charges to secure a date. Now, that doesn't mean a full estimate of every charge. Some charges are incidental, some charges arise during the event or just before it, but to the extent we can identify the hard costs at time of reservation and contract negotiation, we will ask for a 25% deposit. We found that's very at the low end of most fairgrounds, which a lot of them have a 50% requirement.
Can I ask a question about the insurance?
Yes.
It seems to me, and maybe I just don't understand the insurance market, but we're having individuals for different reasons come to in different venues, profit, nonprofit, alcohol, non-alcohol, over a week or one day. Is there not any way that we as the county can purchase the insurance policy that our risk management deems appropriate and almost like a blanket coverage, and then whenever people come in with it to utilize the facility, they would pay their portion or of the premium somehow for several reasons. It's almost like we would add them as an additionally insured, and they would pay for that premium on an annual basis. But you're dividing it amongst perhaps 30 entities. And two things, in my opinion. One, we're getting exactly what our professionals are saying that we need in order to keep ourselves okay, insured properly. And maybe insurance doesn't work that way, but
yeah, it depends on this. It'd be impossible to have an insurance that covers all events, and there's different events. I don't know of another. Most require the entity. I haven't found one that didn't require the entity to have insurance. And you've got to. They all have different risk factors, and they may have different experiences. You know, if they've had suits before, their insurance is going to be a lot different, and our carrier may not include it. You know, don't forget, insurance is experience. So the person holding that, like a big concert, can be different. And I think it's better they insure, because if we've got the insurance and we're primary, and that's not the position you want to be in. They want to be primary in case anything goes wrong. And also the other thing is they are not subject to the limits that the sovereign immunity that we are, right, which it really complicates it, which makes it almost impossible to get the insurance.
Okay. It was a good idea.
It was a good question.
Yeah, and Wes, I thought the same thing, particularly for private use, like a wedding or something. That's where somebody may not have a lot of experience getting this kind of insurance. And but I think a lot of these that are annual things, the gun shows and a lot of these things, they're used to that, so they probably have their own policy. Just anytime they have an event, they have the insurance. But I thought, is there some way we can make it easier for, a family hosting a wedding, or what's that other event, the quinceañera?
Quinceañera, it's a 15-year-old birthday party. essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, those are the things where I think where somebody's going to go, what, how do I get this kind of insurance? And they're just, that's something they wouldn't normally be doing like the other organizations.
For the record, Jason Mack, County Budget Director, we do have the TULIP program, which we can set up the folks that are having a quinceañera or a wedding with that.
What does TULIP stand for?
Temporary Use Liability Insurance Policy. There you go. That was pretty good.
Very good, Jason.
I knew it was something cute. Yeah.
We got to give you a promotion like administrator.
There you go.
Something like that.
So
It's
we
called
can
rose
work
plan.
with those who aren't, when you come with the big event makers, they're obviously more familiar with this. But if
Right.
somebody's having a quinceañera, they may only do that once for their one daughter or whatever. So we do have those programs, and we can help walk the
that's good.
applicants through those.
And that's just another insurance product. But our job at intake is to provide them with a level of customer service, and many times it becomes some event planning because they're not familiar with the process. And so we spend the time with them to teach them about the facilities, the capacities, the insurance, and some of the preparations that they have to engage in to have a nice event.
Okay, so we just don't hand them the contracts they hear, and we can coach them through it and add that level of service.
I guess just looking at it though, and I follow really what you're saying about the sovereign immunity. That is, I get that, but I can't help but think that if you give a policy that would ensure the fair, and it's one that we could use all year long, it may bring in another type of festival of some kind. It may be that since we use it all year long, quite possibly for what the firefighters are already paying for insurance policy for the fair, would get us 2/3 to 80% of the entire premium. And then if somebody else did want to come in, then they can start paying for the rest of the policy. And we wouldn't have to worry about sending them into the TULIP program. And I don't just...
Well, it's a matter of risk. Insurance is a layered process, and the idea is that the county is at a deep layer. So you have your event, the county's not holding the event. Now, if we're hosting an event, we may want to explore what our risk is and how we can insure the particular event over and above our self-insurance and reinsurance programs. But for the event maker, that the onus should really be on them to take the front line of risk, and then to have a layer behind that. And then by the time you get to the county, by the time you get to Pharaoh's chariot, you should have gone through a lot of different lines of protection, if you will.
Okay.
So that's the philosophy.
So what you're saying, there's no instruments out there that we could insure the facility and defray the cost to prospective rentals? There's no policies out there that would cover for any and all perils and threats and challenges that we could do and offset the cost with prospective rentals.
The policy is event specific. So in fact, our Fairgrounds policy now requires as a condition of the permit for the event to have full disclosure of every activity that's going to happen, or risk cancellation of that activity, or in some extreme cases, the actual event, because the insurers and the risk manager can't assess the risk without understanding what's going to happen there.
So at the last minute, they throw in little pyrotechnics, or they wanted to serve bourbon honey balls.
That has to be signed, sealed, and delivered 30 days prior to the event, along with the insurance certificates and full payment, which is on your screen as the next substantive policy.
And if I may, I'm just going to note that the court reporter has entered the building, and we will be taking a break at 10:30 for a shade meeting, just so everybody's aware.
One other additional question. There is a difference between I don't want to use a non-for-profit example, but it may be the better choice. If you have a event planner that's going to be dispensing adult beverages of some type of alcohol, their dispensers may be, I don't want to use the word certified, but they've gone through to recognize the perils when somebody's had too much, when you cut them off, that a non-for-profit volunteer member that's just there that day to dispense whatever the adult beverage is has not had that type of training and doesn't know when the point is when you say, this person can't have anymore. And so there's a difference between those policy types. Kind of where I'm going with this, we have some events where somebody partners with the nonprofit, and I don't know if that's an angle to skirt a rule or change something. And if they're partnering with a nonprofit, is the nonprofit really the primary beneficiary of an event? Or how do we get it down into that to know, is somebody using a nonprofit just to get through the profit process easier?
We have very specific rules, policies, and trained staff that can recognize those situations at this point in our development. In fact, the reason is that when the nonprofit engages to serve the alcohol, the state of Florida requires that they retain 100% of the profits. And because they're in a position to do that, it's attractive to the nonprofits. However, the insurance risk is much higher.
Right.
So they have to make a business decision as to what level of insurance they want to retain, and in terms of their business model for the event, to realize greater gross sales in serving their alcohol.
And then for the smaller events, the afternoon or the evening events, there is an opportunity for someone to partner with someone that has that type of license with the licensed dispensers that possibly could go under their insurance, so there may be some other options to get the cost down. Because if somebody's doing a 3-hour wine tasting event on a Saturday night, they can't afford to pay a $5,000.
Right. In that case, they would have two options. One is called a 4COP, unrestricted license, where they bring in a licensed vendor. We prefer that and encourage it. But of course, if the nonprofit wants to engage in the application to get a 3-day temporary license, we walk them through that process as well. You can also do it with a caterer's license, which has a mobile beverage rider to it, and that does require the caterer to serve 51% of the food. So there's a lot of nuances and layers to state liquor law, but we've covered them in our policy.
Okay. And it looks like with what we'll have going forward, the questions and issues that have come up in the past, it won't be because they didn't know, because now there's clarity in the document that everyone's going to have as they go forward, which will just put everybody on the same even playing field of understanding.
Along those same lines, how are we going to know if what we're creating here is owners, more owners than it should be on
insurance
certain
requirements?
venues? What's that?
With respect to insurance requirements, or
no,
overall?
Just in general. I mean,
we'll probably know in a year or two if we see the upward slope of revenues coming in at the same angle.
Well, actually, we think we're trying to clarify things for the people coming. We didn't have a written set of rules, and I think we tried to develop a policy so we've got something we hand to them up front. They know the process. They've got a checklist to go through, and they can accomplish it. And there has been some confusion, and also,
if I could, Joe, has anybody handed this to the Rotary Club? Say, for example, in the event that y'all have this next year, this is what you're going to have to go through. Give us your thoughts.
Yes. So since the risk management item, and today we've had to use a sort of a pending ordinance theory, if you will.
Right.
And we've applied the standards, and we've had a lot of success with, because they're used to it in other counties, quite frankly. And the Rotary Club, for example, did come in under the grandfathered in under the prior alcohol deposit, some of those rules, but they were receptive. One of the next items on your screen is payment before the event, and that's very common. A couple of event makers will say, well, I can't generate the revenue to pay you until afterwards. So we're going to have to work through some of those, but we're going to implement the policy and work through it.
and here's what happens in that case. Two people call up and say, well, we want to reserve the fairgrounds, and then we say it's already reserved. Well, did they put money down? No, well, I'm willing to put money down, so I should get it. We didn't have a written policy, so we had to change that. And I think anytime the Rotary or anyone else has an event with alcohol, they're going to have to buy insurance. It doesn't matter where it is.
How about if we simply ask the staff as they go forward in the next year to have something like a light exit interview, so that they actually take the step of asking the customer what went right and what went wrong in general terms, and then asking them to
what can be improved on.
Keep a list of that, and then based on the experience of 6 or 9 months, probably at least 9 months to a year,
I like that.
then see if some addendums or modifications to the policy would be warranted.
Okay.
Maybe do surveys. We'll have a survey for everyone that rents.
That's a good idea.
So
customer survey.
If, as a possible addition to that, knowing what all our adjoining counties have a similar facility that they rent out for things is one, how do we compare to St. Lucie or Brevard or Okeechobee. So when a regional type vendor's looking at to putting on a program, they're probably looking at the 4 or 5 counties in a region if they're doing a significant show, just to make sure we're competitive in the rate structure, that we're not above and we're not too cheap. And
Okay, so first, with respect to the chairman's comment, we're developing outside of the policy, but internally, a procedural document that could train someone coming in as a new employee to understand how to handle these policies. And that does include a post-event recap and meeting to discuss the pros and cons of what just happened and take feedback from the event maker. With respect to the other counties, we did survey several counties, and these are either friendly policies or right in the middle in terms of what we require from the event maker.
And interestingly, from what I saw in the backup, it seems like the facilities that we offer are actually different from other counties. There doesn't seem to be a real definite overlap in size and scope and things like that. So it gives us an advantage there, I think.
And also keep in mind that the policies were developed to be adaptable to the intergenerational center, because it's going to be an event venue, and with some review, we'll be able to just apply a lot of these policies.
And
to
just
the
so you know, Mike, you got 2 minutes, and you got
Yep.
this will be broken off. So
no
you may
problem.
have to come back after the shade meeting.
In 2 minutes, we can finish some of the highlights of the policies, including exclusivity. A lot of event makers want 30 days between events. That usually makes good business sense. If you recall, last year we had 2 major concerts at Dodgertown. The second one was not as well attended, and it was in very close proximity to the first. That's something we can do contractually, and we've built in a system where they can waive that for an event that they think is similar but not competitive to their event. And we have policies for post-event reconciliation of any fees that are due that were not part of the payment in full policy at 30 days prior. We do allow return of your deposit in a partial to full, depending on when you cancel. And of course, we have taken control of the security requirements in consultation with the sheriff's office, and will mandate your level of security and pass that cost on to the event maker. And that's a good place to break, Mr. Chairman, if you are inclined.
Well, thank you.
Wrap it up.
I will ask if there are any more questions. The board?
Just, yeah, in that survey, I think another thing that I'd like to have asked is what improvements to our facilities could have made your event, I'm going to say, more successful?
Yeah.
Or phrase it how you need to, but you get what I'm.
Well,
for example, the firefighters with their situation, having more powerful transformers out there, which is done, but just that feedback.
I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item. There being none, I'll accept the motion to approve.
There is more to the, yeah, I'm saying if you have
In
to.
that case, then we'll have to break now.
Yeah, if you have a hard break, then now
We'll
would be
break
the time.
now and come back for the rest of it. I would have to read the statement before we go. This is the commencement of the attorney-client session. The estimated time of the closed attorney-client session is 45 minutes. Present at the meeting will be Commissioners Joseph E. Flesher, Vice Chairman, Wesley S. Davis, Tim Zork, Peter O'Brien, and me, Bob Solari, Chairman. Also present will be the County Attorney Dylan Reingold, outside counsel Casey Walker and Will Murphy, County Administrator Joe Baird, and a certified court reporter. At the conclusion of the closed attorney-client session, this public meeting will be reopened. The public meeting is hereby reopened, and the attorney-client session is now terminated. Thank you very much. We're going to recommence with the request for approval of revised Fairgrounds policy template, festival license and agreement, and I'll ask Mr. Zito to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Zito, Assistant County Administrator, for the record. And where we left off was moving into the section to consider alcohol permit fees. And as you know, about a year ago, we engaged a amendment to Section 205, which governs parks, and granted approval for alcohol policy at Dodgertown, at Sandridge, and at the Fairgrounds, and also the Intergenerational Center. So what we're proposing today is not a comprehensive review of all of the Fairgrounds fees, but just a few that pertain to alcohol and a couple of new fees that we'll show you in just a moment. So the concept for alcohol permit fees is to distinguish them between private affairs, for-profit affairs, and non-profit affairs. And we've learned over time that the best way to assess the fee for a private affair is to keep it at a flat fee. So if you are in every case, we require a licensed vendor or a specialized temporary license issued by the state of Florida. So there'll be no alcohol consumption or gratuitous giveaway of alcohol at the Fairgrounds, period. If you desire to, you'll have to go through a process to apply for the permit, which is issued by the Parks Division, and in some cases ratified by the Board of County Commission in the case of a festival, which we'll get to in the next agenda item. For this slide, you'll see that the private is $500 a day, the for-profit is 15% of gross sales. The nonprofit can be $400 per day if they desire to give it away. So if they have a $100 a plate dinner and they're not going to charge for individual unit consumption, then they can pay the flat fee as would a wedding or quinceañera. If they're nonprofit and they choose to engage a licensed vendor, then we reduce the fee to 10% because they're going to have to share some of those proceeds with the licensed vendor. If they're going to apply for a 3-day temporary license, as did the Rotary event that was presented to you earlier, then it would be 15% of gross sales because they're retaining 100% of those profits.
And so they've fallen under they're not doing this process yet.
They actually are under contract prior to the implementation.
Correct. So, and so just out of pure curiosity, for next year or whatever, did we ask them just what they thought about this?
Yeah, they understand that's everywhere they go, they're going to have this or a greater burden.
Whenever somebody asks me about where does the money go, what do I tell them?
Well, you probably should start with
It's to offset the cost of the fairgrounds, and it goes in the in the MSTU. It goes to MSTU, but it goes to offset the cost of the fairground facility, which it does not cover.
And so these dollars will go back into that specific account for Parks and Recreation?
They do. It's the Fairgrounds Improvement Fund. So right now we need a new roof on the Expo building, and we could not get there with just generating these revenues, but they're going to make us an impact, and a greater impact than they ever have before, understanding the trends that I displayed earlier.
Okay. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I think, so the private would be like somebody throwing a wedding or something?
Yes.
And they're going to have maybe an open bar or champagne. It just seems to me 500 is a little high for that kind of use. You know, I'm good with the profit and nonprofit fees, but, you know, trying to be considerate for what Commissioner Davis might have coming up here in a year or two. You know, if somebody wants to throw a wedding, that just seems high to me because there's no profit motive. There's, you know, it's just throwing a wedding. So I don't know if the board agrees with me or not, but I'd rather see that more like at 250 or something, and but that's just my opinion.
Let's tally all this up. We're looking at it in piecemeal here. What would it be for a private venue to utilize the facility under this new structure?
With an alcohol permit, serving alcohol.
Well, yeah, but I know what that's going to be. I can just
No, I said, but we want to make sure that number is included so we can see what the total is.
Yes.
Right now, you already have a fee in place of $300, and with all the other amenities for a private affair quinceañera, they're approaching anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000 on average, including the alcohol permit. So this would be increasing that by 200. And they are very staff intensive post-event. Any private affair in that expo building with alcohol, I can tell you, everyone can behave and they still make a mess, and we have to put the place back together in the morning. So that was the idea behind the slight increase. But whatever your pleasure is,
Well, can we make private then the same as a nonprofit, say 400? I mean,
certainly.
Got a motion?
Whatever you're.
Did you want to take motions on that?
Well, for this one, I think so we keep it in line.
I'd like to make a motion that we make private 400 per day.
Motion for Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Solari. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
So now we're at $2,400. But I get it, I do, and I saw the livestock pavilion with the leak last year, and so.
Especially, I was trying to look out for you here.
And I do appreciate it.
I know what you got coming.
No, absolutely.
I just wonder if we're going to get some of that free alcohol.
Yeah, I hope I get invited now. And then, Mr. Chairman, just kind of while I'm on that, Mike, if you go to, on our backup, our page 192, there's a table of the rental fees and stuff. Earlier in the document, you identified the 3 user groups: profit, nonprofit, and private. So this is kind of just a housekeeping, but you've got, here now you got listed standard instead of profit or private.
Yeah.
So I would just make things consistent. If we're going to have the 3 user groups be profit, nonprofit, private, then I think in the that table there, you ought to be consistent with those same user group names.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, standard includes private and for-profit.
I would just put private and
Okay.
and for-profit there, or whatever, just so it's consistent.
Yes, sir. Any other questions on the fee section of the alcohol permit?
So just real quick, if somebody were to go out there and host a private event and they were to serve wine or beer, it would have to be a licensed vendor to serve it.
Yes.
And that's whether you're giving it away or whether it's a cash bar.
Yes.
Okay.
And don't forget, once we start reducing our fees for people that are private, we're competing against the private Dodgertown. We're competing against all these private clubs that get upset. We will get the calls. I'm just going to tell you. It's just like a golf course. We get the calls on our rates being too low because they're going to go out of business. So,
Commissioner Davis, that was the administrator's office made a decision to recommend requiring the licensed vendor. Actually, our risk manager was fine with it if the appropriate insurance was in place for host liquor liability. It's just that what we find when we have private affairs, the guests tend to bring all the alcohol on site and they bring it to the table, and it just has a kind of a fraternity atmosphere, and we felt that if it was run through a licensed vendor in a stabilized bar, it at least has a process.
Help me understand, who does that?
Well, there's not a whole lot of companies retain the 4COP mobile, unrestricted license, which is the one that costs you between $300,000 and $400,000 a year.
That's like a package store then?
Yeah, it's the 4COP unrestricted. Now, a caterer can come in and do it, but they have to also provide the food. 51% of the food, which in most cases is they cater the affair for food, so they serve the alcohol as well. That's probably the private party's best option.
Okay. And that's only if the caterer actually provides that service, though?
Yes, sir. Caterer cannot provide the alcohol unless they provide the food as well.
And what kind of license is necessary for that?
That's called a 13CT, or also known as a caterer's license.
Well, we sure do regulate everything.
what's the state?
We're just finding this out.
You know, I'm hearing the concerns about the price point of, hey, you're going to have an event there. There are so limited amount of venues out here in Indian River County. I mean, you have, Holman Stadium, you have the Fairgrounds, the State College, but there's no large area for people to go to have a sizable event. I could see, not a discussion today, but I could see us in a few years up the road looking at an enterprise fund.
Yeah.
I mean, again, with the reduction in cost, and even though it's only $100, but if we price this right, this may take off to the level in which we'll be looking at this equal to the range.
That was exactly my criticism of watching it sit whenever I made the motion to privatize it, is I agree with you 100% that this is, I mean, this is an asset that was way underutilized, in my opinion, for the longest. So, for that very reason.
Well, that's a good point, Commissioner. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you. Okay. More questions? Thank you. So, again, we're going to propose to come back to you in less than 180 days for a review of the facility fees. This is not a fee review, but we want to disclose a couple of new fees and just an expanded hour in the Fairgrounds rules. So these couple of new fees. We have some golf carts out there now that we have surplused from the new fleet at Sandridge. These are the older carts. So we have 4 of them that we house and maintain at the Parks Division, and we make them available for rental during events. Of course, at no cost to the Parks Division. And we have an electronic marquee sign, as you well know.
What are the, help me with the numbers on that. For the
sign is, the golf cart rentals is $70 per day.
Okay. And the marquee?
The marquee is $100 for the first week prior to the event, and each week before that is $50.
Okay. And
then we purchased some portable fire extinguishers, becoming very popular. So, $10 gets you.
I bet you we require that, though.
Not mobile ones. We provide fire extinguishers in accordance with the fire code inside of the buildings. That's standard. But if you want to have one on your golf cart, it's an additional $10.
And
so this is something that is a new concept. A lot of times we'll have requests for acreage, right? So you can rent the 7.4 acre stretch of land that's known as the parking lot and just hold an event there. So a couple times a year we have a circus out there. A couple times a year we may have different activities out there. That's $125 is the only fee we'll collect. In certain cases, $150 for profit. So what happens is they'll say, well, we want to rent that acreage, but we can't have any other event in the expo building. So we're 9 months out. We're shutting down the expo building, which is the primary facility there. So we thought if you're going to require us to shut that down, then you should pay a $250 administrative fee to do that, which is what works out to 50% of the minimum rental in that facility. That facility has a $125 an hour charge, so it equates to $500 for a 4-hour minimum rental, and we just basically cut it in half and ask them to cooperate with that because the acreage is so outdated and so low right now. And then when we come back to you, we may revisit that because we're going to propose some different fee structures to the parking area, which is less valuable than the midway, which is in between the 11-acre section that where we did the new clearing. That's a different open air acreage amenity. So we'll come back to you with those. We thought it was too much for today.
All right.
Okay. And then, given the county and the city expanding their alcohol service ordinance to 2 a.m., we expanded this by 1 hour. So right now, if you have a wedding, we require you to shut it down by 11 o'clock. You have to be out of the building by 12. Now we want you to shut it at midnight and be out by 1 a.m.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Nice.
It's time to go to bed anyhow.
Nothing good happens after midnight.
That's exactly right.
So we're asking you to approve the policy manual, including the template license agreement. What's significant about that is we actually created a template license agreement that staff is authorized to sign. Under the current state of the law in Indian River County, we cannot sign a festival permit or license agreement. But what we've done is we've taken those standards and built them in to the administrators or his designee's authority to sign those license agreements. They're just about identical to the festival. So what you see is a template in your agenda backup. The next item is an actual festival agreement, and they're virtually identical. So when you get into that substantive discussion, you're going to determine the level and frequency upon which you want to see these agreements. And I'll explain that in more detail later. So now it's time for your motion, if you're so inclined.
So I'll ask if anybody has a motion to...
Move to approve the...
Fairgrounds policy and template?
Yes.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Fleischer. Commissioner Zorc.
Yes, two things, and I think, Michael, you and I, we visited on these. When we rent to someone that's going to be having activities for different age groups, the two things that I had noticed trying to remember which event it was at, where they had children supervising children's play, not an adult supervising it. In one case, they had a climbing device where you'd climb up probably close to 15 feet in the air, and the person that was supervising was maybe 10, and not really doing a good job at regulating the safety of the kids climbing up and down on this device. So one, I don't know, and I don't want to micromanage everything. I know there's a lot of what I'd say the professional operators of inflatables and slides, and those guys own their stuff and they're there and they make sure it's run and managed right. So I don't know how that works out. And the other one was where there was an extensive use of ground extension cords to where a lot of trip hazards. There was one where between the rows of booths that were out in the grassy area, just a lot of open cords, not in a raceway track that, you can rent those strips and put the cords in it. They're usually yellow. So those are just some safety issues that some basic supervision. I don't know, at some point I know there's a fire permit required when the tents are over a certain number of square footage. But
Yes.
if you have a single that's under it, but if you're putting 5 of them together, are you over that requirement that triggers a safety inspection or not?
Yeah, sure. We've added some clarity to our policy and also our discussions with our applicants as they're coming in, and we've gotten a better handle on how to advise them. And one thing that we've really worked on is making sure that the applicants have the special events tent permit, and that's actually for every single applicant that comes in that's using an outside space that's going to have tents or the bounce houses or anything like that. We have a check and balance now for that to make sure that fire prevention inspections being done, and the fire inspector would be catching a lot of those things like the extension cords, the tents. I like the point that you make about the supervision for children's activities, and with a fairground staff person being assigned to each event, that would be something that we would catch when we walk through the event. So
Good. What's the fee for the fire inspection on the tents outside?
I think it's $30.
Is that per, or is that the entire event?
What we ask is the applicant pull that, because what happens is if the applicant or the event promoter, whoever's actually having the event, doesn't pull that, then each and every single vendor would have to pull their own permit.
Okay.
So now that we have that check and balance in place, we're able to make sure that that's done up front. It's a flat $30 fee.
For the entire event?
For the entire
All right,
event.
we're going in the right direction. Good.
Yeah, and the only other outside fee, Commissioner, is the $75 fee we charge if you're seeking a temporary license for nonprofit alcohol sales. Then our code enforcement division has a $75 application fee, but that's the only other county-imposed fee.
And that's for nonprofit
That's
alcohol
to get
sales.
what we call a 3-day temporary permit to serve.
Commissioner O'Brien.
I'd like to publicly thank all the staff that's working on the fairgrounds. David and his crew do a great job maintaining it. And Beth, thank you for taking on these added responsibilities. Michael said that you're taking a lot of this on as well as your regular conservation lands work. So I just want to publicly thank all of you for stepping up and making the fairgrounds a really a benefit to the county and the community. So thanks for all your work that you're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I will say, the fact that it's taken us this long to formalize this process is a testament to David Fleetwood, because he's handled pretty much everything on his own. But now we have to move into, with the proliferation of events and the sophistication of the contracts, insurance, we really do need to move into this more comprehensive policy.
And Beth, you mentioned the tents. That's anything beyond a 10 by 10, correct? The 10 by 10 does not qualify for inspections at all, but it's a blanket for all the tents that will be on property?
I think that's correct, but the main thing is getting the inspector out there so that they can walk through and they're looking for the tags to make sure that the tents have the appropriate fire rating on them.
Extinguishers.
And that's where the portable fire extinguishers come in. A lot of our event makers were having to rent those from like a party rental place, so they're having to have those delivered, and they were paying more than the $10. So it's just easier for us to have that on
It's a
site.
service. It goes back to that checklist. What else could we provide to make your experience better?
Absolutely.
And I know that our fire division has done that in the past. When someone fell short of their obligation, they ensured that the fire extinguishers were available, and we thank them for that as well. Mike, you mentioned about having to close the pavilion if the area was rented, so that we would lose the opportunity to utilize the building. Is there any thought process, maybe a discussion for today, that we could change the threshold, the opening, the entry into the fairgrounds, so that you can utilize the building and the rest of the fairgrounds?
100%. I mean, our first goal is to make the events compatible.
Right.
And we have run simultaneous events. You know, you can't run the military expo and explosion show with the dog show in the Ag Pavilion.
No, that's not going to happen.
But we try to make every event compatible and look for ways to run them simultaneously. Some event makers actually request no other event for whatever reason, and that's when the only time we would require the administrative fee.
And with the advent of the intergenerational facility, will there be any room to be able to rent that as well? Or that will interrupt with schedule plans? In other words, you know, if that's not available, could they go down to Oslo?
Our internal process I was speaking of earlier with respect to post-event interviews and assessment also has what we call a turn down list or turn away policy, and that automatically sends them to the intergenerational center and vice versa. Anytime there's an interested event maker who either can't or doesn't want to work with the fairgrounds, we always will refer our other facilities.
And we could discuss lighting at a future meeting.
100%.
As far as the parking lot.
And while we're doing this, as far as...
Thank you.
What are we using to let the public or interested parties know about these facilities?
We have a event coordinator who has been active in social media. We think that's helping. Okay. It's word of mouth right now. It's it's the best form of advertising. We're not spending any money on promotional and marketing, and I think it's just a reputation building. And
well, they have the wedding guide, wedding planner's guide, or something.
We don't. Beth, you're receiving a lot of the calls. What are you hearing?
How do they find us?
Right now, most people for private parties are finding out about us through word of mouth, meaning, the quinceañeras it's a very popular space. They like the square footage. They like that it's indoor, and they like the events. And so that's basically word of mouth. Same thing for the weddings. We haven't done any marketing, but if you look, we have 31 events booked, and that's out of 52 weekends out of a year. So we almost, at this point in time, needed to have our policy in place and a procedure and the ability to be able to handle how many events are coming in right now, because they were coming in so fast.
Wow. Good.
So
how much do you attribute that to the alcohol policy?
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers over the past several years, and now that it's kind of gaining momentum now that we have the alcohol policy.
But keep in mind that the numbers you saw earlier in the presentation have zero from alcohol.
Yeah.
So we've not begun to collect the fees, and certainly under this structure. We are entertaining the potential for at least one major concert event a year that has the potential to generate conservatively $100,000 in alcohol sales, of which $15,000 would go to the county. So they'd be, chunks of revenue that we have never seen before.
Yeah, we're going to have to step up our your marketing considerably with the new intergenerational facility, because the model's built on filling it up, and it's going to be a great venue for people to hold events. So we're going to have to really step up our marketing, our social media, the TV, brochures, getting involved, just like you said.
Yeah, get with those people that plan those events.
We mentioned the quinceañeras earlier. I don't know if many of you realize it's larger than the largest wedding you've ever attended. I mean, it's the coming of the age of a 15-year-old, and I don't know if they're going to be utilizing the alcohol portion of the event. I don't believe they should. but I mean, there might be some people present that might partake in alcohol.
So this
But-
is you're talking about the birthday that's coming up?
Yeah, well, it's the 15-year-old coming in of certain Latin families, and they celebrate in a very big way. I mean, they'll bring in limousines and bands and entertainment, and it's a day-long event.
Yeah. Major
it's a huge
tradition.
event.
Really?
Yeah, it's more like a confirmation or bar mitzvah.
bar mitzvah,
Yeah.
15-year-old birthday party, quinceañera is a
As big as a large wedding.
Well, at this point, I'll ask if there's anybody from the audience who wants to speak on this before we vote. We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank
But I
you.
guess you're not going to go too far.
No, sir.
We'll move to 12C2, request for approval of Rocktoberfest Festival License Agreement for the use of the Indian River County Fairgrounds with clarification of the IRC Code subsection 205.083.
Thank you. So this event is not unlike some of the other events that have come before you, but we chose this as an example to illustrate, again, the level and frequency upon which you want to regulate these types of affairs from the dais or designate some authority to staff. So this event, and we do currently have an ordinance that will require some clarification and intent of the governing body. So this event is known as Rocktoberfest, of course, happening in October with an Oktoberfest theme. It's produced by Fully Involved Event Productions. Wayne Howard is here. He is a principal of that LLC, and he seeks to produce a music and entertainment festival event called Rocktoberfest, in which he'll offer different music genres featuring performances on 2 stages spread out over a 3-day festival. So this event is your typical formula for a festival because it's multi-day festival theme event, music, ticketed gate, and alcohol sales. So this proposes event hours for Friday 3 to 11, Saturday 10 to 11, and Sunday 10 until 10. So we used our form license agreement in this endeavor, and the producers put down greater than a 25% deposit. And what we did in that case, because we were in, again, I see Mr. Paladin here, the pending ordinance time, we chose to implement that requirement, and we used what we call a placeholder agreement. So this is someone who comes in and says, I want the date, I'm serious about it, so I want to preserve the date, but we know there are formalities in executing the terms of a license agreement, and the county needs some time for a due diligence period in examining our security levels, our organizational wherewithal, our financial wherewithal, our health department codes and regulations, whether we can actually perform and accomplish what we say we will do. And so we have a placeholder agreement securing the date right now. And now today is bringing forth the full agreement for your consideration. It's a $5,500 facility fee, and this agreement does call for 15% of gross alcohol sales and 15% of the vendor merchandise rental fees, not a percentage on each transaction, but a percentage on each vendor relationship that the event maker has with his individual providers.
So it'd be like you rent a booth?
Yes, sir.
And therefore, it's pretty simple for y'all to find out what the gross is. It's the number of booths times what they charge for the booth.
Yes, that's
I'm
much
quick like that.
simpler than trying to get into the point of sale for the sale of a hat.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's our vision there. And in the policy, I say not to exceed 15%. There may be some events like the powwow where they're selling, $2 items, and the vendors are just mom and pops, and we don't want to get into.
I don't want us to get in the middle of that.
Thank you.
There's no
All
way
right.
to. My question is also, Commissioner, and why does this have to come to this level? What is it that is so concerning here that because this is a lot of time for y'all, unless you're just bringing it to us to show us how this entire process would work, but at the end of this, a motion to approve is very, very cumbersome and waste of your time.
Yes, sir, and it is designed to do just that, bring it to your attention, to piggyback the policy that you approved today, show you the formalities we're putting in place, but there's also an Indian River County, little-known Indian River County ordinance that regulates festivals, and it's in your backup. And
Hold on, I got a surprise for you.
not only does it regulate festivals, but it actually regulates the hours upon which the festival can operate. So what I've done is I've given you the festival so you can see what the intent was, and I can tell you that we've adopted those standards in our internal review. So the template contract matches this festival contract. But in terms of subsection 3 of the ordinance, which I'll display for you in a moment, it makes it a little bit impracticable for a festival-type event to do a multi-day, multi-hour event.
Not a little impractical, essentially impossible.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, the problem I have with the staff interpretation of the event is that basically words have no meaning at the end. So, I mean, I think we need to be clear on what we're actually saying when we're saying
Yeah, and that's not a recommendation. That's just one way to handle it without amending the ordinance. But
Right, yeah,
we'll
but
get
that-
there in a moment. So
Well,
here it
I
is.
think we do need to amend the ordinance because the fairground actually violates it, the fairground event.
The fair
firefighters'
itself.
fair, because it's.
Let's
for
change-
and-
You know,
and
there's-
we- and that's
changing the
okay, we
ordinance
didn't-
doesn't bother me.
And we're not complaining about that, but that's why we should
Yeah.
change it, you know, because we've been an event that we know is a good event, and we're already alive, but we've
So
always
to-
done that.
Yes, thank you, Joe. So 20508 is the ordinance itself, but subsection 3 is problematic because it restricts the festival to continue for more than one 8-hour period rather than 24-hour rest period. So as applied to this event, you would have to stop Saturday at 8 hours or, depending on your interpretation, actually close on Sunday.
Yeah, we need
So-
to change that.
So what we've done, so we've recommended you approve the license agreement, but also decide whether you would like Dylan and I to come back with a review of the ordinance itself, particularly the subsection 3. So you've asked a very important question, Commissioner Davis. Outside of this dilemma, do you want us to bring back every license agreement to the board that qualifies as?
No. No, I think if the appropriate place for something like this, at the most, in my opinion, Commissioners, is under the informational portion of the agenda. That way the public can look at it. And it's,
I mean, I thought the whole purpose of this was to make it objective enough so that it was basically an administrative procedure.
Exactly.
I mean, if it has to come back, something like has to come back before us, then the whole thing has failed. You know,
Correct.
as far as I see it.
Correct.
I mean, so it should be, but, so in the general statement, I mean, I'm with Commissioner Davis on that one. We shouldn't have to have it come back before us.
The only event that we may is something that may be shocking to the community or harmful, then we would bring it back that we feel could be a problem for the community.
well, let me ask you this. Let's see, I don't want to get... what kind of discretion in this ordinance or in this policy does staff have?
None.
Or is this like not a rezoning, but...
The only discretion we have is if we would somehow subjectively determine that most of these events are not festivals, because it doesn't define festival, and Dylan's reviewed it as well. But it does require every one of them to come before the board. Now, this is outside of subsection 3 and the 8-hour issue. This is just the ordinance itself requires every one.
That's probably general consensus up here. That's overkill.
And most of the requirements inside are already implemented in our policy. There's security, they're making sure the health department's aware of it. So we have a meeting tomorrow with a group coming in from London that wants to do a major concert event. We're assembling in the Public Works conference room. Health department's invited.
Perfect.
Public Works, traffic control, security, sheriff, fire department, we'll all be there.
Why don't you structure this similar to our either pre-app or TRC? If you've got something that jumps to that level, because that would save everybody, I think, so much time. And I don't know what you would call it, the ERC. I don't know, environment or anyhow. There ought to be some kind of cute little tulip that we can use.
So before we get to the
Throw a couple of letters in there.
Yeah, make a good acronym. Make it cute.
So what would be, Dylan, what would be your input hearing some of the discussion that's on the dais?
Well, there are two different concepts going on. You have the contract, which is this license agreement. Now, traditionally under our code, if it's under $50,000, then the county administrator has the authority to approve those without coming to the board. If it's something in value of over $50,000, it has to come back to the board for approval. We have a separate issue, and I defer to Michael on what he believes is the cost or numbers involved with these, but there's a separate issue in the festival ordinance that says the special permit which is different from the license agreement. And the permit has to be approved by the board. So one of the questions that Michael and I need to know from the board is, do you want the permit to be an administrative function that is handled through Michael's division, or is that something you'd like to see come back to the board?
I'd like to know why the ordinance was created.
Well, if you turn to page 230 and 230 in your backup.
I think the reason with my history, it was because we may have an event that we think is not good for the community, and you may have something that the commission didn't want. I think we could put language where we have the authority, staff has the authority.
I think what we need to do is define festival well enough so that the staff has an idea of what we're talking about, so that if some of these events that may be not quite consistent with community standards, then it would have to come before the board.
Now, there are two separate issues. Again, the license agreement and the permit. The permit could be actually for anything on public or private property, as I understand the ordinance code. So it's not just limited to the fairgrounds. So if someone was hosting a festival anywhere in the unincorporated parts of Indian River County, they'd have to obtain a permit. If they are hosting it on the fairgrounds property, they would enter into a license agreement and would have to obtain the permit as well. So there are just a couple different concepts going on. And it'd be helpful for the board to give us direction as to how you would like, would you like the permits to always come back to the board? Would you like permits to be handled administratively? And similar question with regards to the license agreement. Is that a board or a staff decision?
Keep in mind, we already have a process in place where we bring you events such as the one on the agenda today for Dodgertown, and that's a consent item. There's a process in place. The Parks Division, myself, and Alan Plakowicz developed a set of forms, contracts. There's a process involved. There's sign-offs involved. It just comes to you more or less for informational purposes, but because the chairman signs it, it goes on consent, and we can do very similar process for this.
I'm all with Commissioner Davis. I mean, I think that we need sharp administrative teeth here, and let it be decided upon by your group. After all, if someone has a challenge, they're going to request public speaking and come before us in any event.
Right.
And if they really must absolutely positively have the fairgrounds, they're going to come before us, and they're going to present their case. So either way, we're going to hear it.
Yeah, and keep in mind, you can get a 10-year mining permit without it coming before this board.
So you need the tools. You need the tools to be able to handle any and all that comes before your ballot lines.
Okay. You clear on that?
If it's the board's discretion, obviously when Michael and I go to rework the ordinance, one of the issues we'll address is the 8-hour. I don't know if the board's told us where they are yet on the 8-hour issue, but I've heard from the board that the festival definition should be updated. And what I've heard from the board is that permits should be more administrative in nature as opposed to be coming back before the board for approvals.
As long as they're in the statute in a clear way so that they can be objectively determined. So there's no, for me, they can't be as loose as the 205-083. I mean, I can't tell anybody how, right here, the staff says, staff proposes to the extent that a legislative intent can be garnered from the plain language of the ordinance, a reasonable interpretation would require no less than a 30-minute break in each 8-hour segment of music festivals. As I read that, that's somehow consistent with the 205-083, which would be an interpretation I certainly couldn't live with, because to interpret that, you'd have to say that words have no meaning. I mean, I just don't know how you get from that 3-point to that interpretation. I mean, to me, that's
right. So
Orwellian.
So
I would like to strike out the possibility of 1A and basically say that, no, we've got to figure out if we're going to have Rocktoberfest, they're going to have certain components to them. So to me, it's a matter of either we decide we're not going to have them, or we rewrite the ordinance to actually reflect how they operate to some degree.
I think that staff is best served in looking out for the public safety, welfare of the citizens when it comes time for an event to take place, and it has to, I agree.
So keep in mind, this agenda item was drafted with the existing law in mind, not presupposing that this commission would want to alter or amend the existing law. So what we have here, if you go to page 230, you see the actual ordinance. So you have two issues here. The first one is governing and regulating festivals, which is not defined. So if we're going to attempt to define it, I would say an event of significant economic and monetary impact attended by thousands of people over a certain period of time, involving gated admission and alcohol sales and a whole bunch of reasons why we want to call it a festival, as opposed to just about everything else you see out there.
Yeah.
And that event is coming in potentially October if we can get to contract. I think that's the magnitude of the event that you may want to have before you.
And that's the one you're fixing to meet about?
Yeah, so beyond that, beyond defining what a festival is and how infrequent the definition would bring it before you, we have this subsection 3 that is problematic for this particular contract. So the 4 examples are really kind of, and Commissioner Solari's actually pointed it out, that you're either going to kind of willy-nilly interpret it not to require a break by saying, oh, we'll take a half hour off, or you're going to abolish it completely, or you're going to scrap it and come back with a new one. If recommendation could be to abolish that section and then just operate within the festival ordinance.
I think,
that's one.
When I first read this, I thought, yeah, section 3 there seems pretty silly, but I was looking at it in the context of the fairgrounds. But I think we have to keep in mind this is county-wide, unincorporated county. And so you could have say like LaPorte Farms, they want to throw a festival. But there's residential areas around them, and so in that context, it almost kind of makes sense that if you've got neighbors, you don't want it 3 days continuous. I know a lot of the local churches will have a 1 or 2 day fair or festival, and those are close to residential areas. So when you look at it from that point of view, countywide, I can see why the original ordinance had a break in there. So, but from the fairgrounds point of view, it doesn't make sense. So I don't know, Dylan, how we fix that to where we still protect residential neighborhoods and stuff from 3 days of continuous noise, but fairgrounds, you can have 3 days.
Just thinking about it, there may be locational requirements that are tied to it. So if you've got something in the middle of a residential neighborhood, that might need to be taken into consideration as part of how that comes into play in subsection 3.
So the question really is, should we have festivals anywhere near residential neighborhoods?
Well, I think a lot of these churches, usually it's a 1 day thing. They have games and
I don't know that
cooking
reaches what, I think we could, a festival to me is the Harvest Festival. A festival to me is the fair.
So it's gotta be at least a multi-day.
Yeah, a festival to me would be Mud Jam in western Martin County. That's a festival. I wouldn't necessarily call the Jake Owen concert a festival.
Either would I.
It's a 1 day.
A festival is something that rises to it that would actually draw in that original 205.083, which is an ongoing event that carries on for some.
Not that we have any jurisdiction over it, but the Frog Leg Festival is a festival. the number of people it draws, so that's what a festival would look like to me.
And a lot of these are defined by overnight primitive camping, which a lot of the event makers require you to accept as part of the event, which will be something we'll be discussing tomorrow, which is actually permissible by the health department. What was your input from the health department on that?
I talked to both the Community Development Department and the Health Department about, kind of a tailgate camping situation or primitive camping where there's no hookups. As long as the sanitation requirements are met, because the fairgrounds falls under, it doesn't need a special use permit, and that may be something that we need to talk about with community development. Some of these festivals you're talking about with residential situations, they would have to come into the Community Development Department and apply for a special use permit. But because the fairgrounds is a special use in and of itself, it doesn't have to have any kind of special use permit for overnight stays.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we go ahead and approve the attached festival license agreement, and with the understanding that if we don't figure out what we're doing with subsection 3, that at some point we would waive it so that the event can be scheduled with clarity, knowing that they'll be able to host the event. And then also, I think just direct the county attorney to relook at this and give it some thought and come back to us with any suggested recommendations. So that'd be more like 1C, I guess.
Second amended.
So we have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion from
Yeah,
up on the
if I may, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. To Commissioner Davis's point earlier, I don't know if Wayne would mind coming up and speak, but he's kind of the test goat here to go through this process and the contract with the new regulation. So Wayne, just kind of, Commissioner Davis had the question of how onerous is this, or how does it compare to other events? Would you kind of give us your initial feedback of where this is?
Well, what our intent is to bring a family-oriented music festival to Indian River County, something that's not West Palm Beach caliber. Melbourne recently lost Runaway Country to Kissimmee, so the area I think is in need of a local music festival that could bring in some good revenue, but also provide good entertainment to the local surrounding communities.
Well, so Wayne, the question is the conditions of the contract. So the fee, the insurance requirements, the 15% of alcohol sales, all of those things that we had on the previous item, is that something you say, okay, I can live with this, I can do this, this isn't a deal killer, this is...
That's correct.
Okay.
Being a concessions manager at the Firefighters Fair for many years, I was able to work on both sides of this fence, and I explained to them that in the event of a rained out situation, both parties wouldn't lose money. You have guaranteed money up front if you got a flat fee from vendors, and a month out you would know what those fees would be, and it's non-refundable to the vendors and concessionaires. So it's better than trying at Sunday night try to grab fees from people as they're trying to tear down. It's a nightmare, like you said, Mr. Davis.
So from your position as an applicant now and going through this process, you're ready to move forward with your event and things are good?
That's correct.
Okay.
I think it's very fair to
Okay,
an
great.
event production.
Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this?
Just real quick, how, on the insurance, did you follow what I was trying to get at, what my thought process was on that? And is there anything that you know of, even with your experience with the fair
Yes,
manager?
I do understand what you're saying, but as Mr. Baird was saying, that it does come into play. Even when I applied for insurance, they had asked me if I've ever done this before, and also if you've had any problems in the past, that it can reflect your rate. So you don't want somebody who's had maybe some infractions, and you're willing to just give them some insurance because somebody else can't give it to them. So it sounds good, but I don't know that that's it's an unnecessary. It's going to be part of the deal that everybody has to deal with, and it's the yearly policies for people is probably the cheapest if they put on multiple events, but temporary permit insurance is expensive.
Okay. Have you tried the tulip yet?
No, I haven't. I didn't hear about that until today. So
You tried the petunia plant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howard.
Thank you,
I'll ask
gentlemen.
if anybody else from the public wishes to speak on this. There being none, we have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
thank you, gentlemen.
We now go to General Services 3, Recreation, Intergenerational Recreation Center Operation Plan. Mr. Zito.
Okay.
With an assist from Mr. Redstone.
Another PowerPoint, Mike? What are you trying to be a Bob Keating or something?
Yes, the spirit of Bob Keating lives.
They are brief. The discussion's been rather robust. The
We'll
PowerPoints
try to
are-
keep Commissioner Davis under control this time.
Barely.
Okay. All right, so here we are. The long and much anticipated grand opening of the Intergenerational Recreation Center is upon us. Its mission is to provide the state-of-the-art facility featuring diverse recreational programming to serve residents and user groups of all ages, and that is with a high priority on residents of Indian River County first. However, we are now building our venue repertoire in the county, marketing it as a sports destination paradise, and as you can see, the red balloon there adds the IG Center to a very nice array and diverse sports and entertainment venue arrangement we've now I wouldn't say completed, but have ongoing in the development of the county. And as you may know, we have several wonderful features in the IG Center. The gymnasium is the crown jewel of the facility. It features 2 full-size hardwood basketball courts. Our research and the county administrator and budget director's support were to put a surface in the gym that's going to be high quality and attract, not only be attractive to our residents, but to the sports tourism industry as well. And I can tell you that's one of the first questions they ask when they inquire, is what type of surface do you have on the floor? So we're excited about that, not only for basketball, but it adapts very easily to in-floor volleyball net system. So the stanchions are already built into the floor system. They're covered, they open up, and then you have a volleyball, state-of-the-art volleyball venue. Of course, bleacher seating, concession rooms, multi-purpose room, heating kitchens. We have a special room known as with bamboo flooring that I'm sure will garner the nickname of the Bamboo Room, a game room, 8 computer stations in an attempt to integrate this facility with our library system. As you may recall, the original master plan for South County Park did include a library, and as we developed it, we ran out of room. This is going to be a presence inside of the IG Center that will not only feature internet access, but will connect to our e-system, our e-library system and catalog system. Covered walkways. Outdoor gathering area is really an understated amenity. This area is an amenity that I think will be very popular for gatherings and rentals. We haven't built it into the fee schedule until we can actually see it in its finished condition, but I believe that in and of itself will be another area that we can offer for rentals. Okay? And a paver designed sitting area is very comfortable there. Here's some of the dimensions of the rooms. Again, the crown jewel is the gym. It is our largest indoor facility. I see David's not here. I think it rivals the outdoor expo center you saw with the covered sides. It's about the same square footage, holds a few less people than our expo and open air pavilion. Game rooms, activity rooms, multi-purpose rooms. The nice thing about these rooms is that 2 of them, as you see, can be split in half, and their square footage and capacities are on the right there. And our largest multi-purpose room that can hold 217 people in a classroom setting can be split into thirds.
Good. And is that carpet? What kind of flooring is on those?
It'll be a mixture of carpet and tile.
So this is a mock schedule. So this is a typical summer schedule. That's, some of these things are projected, but our vision is to have the center full during the AM, PM, and evening, as you know, primarily for seniors during the day, and school-age activities after school, and then our regular programming at night. Of course, all age groups are encouraged to participate at all times of the day, but we feel that's where some of the most targeted user groups will land. As you can see, there's a mixture of many different activities,
Mr. Chairman,
including tournaments.
Commissioner, thank you. Every month I host a community update down in South County, and it's the first Monday of every month. And currently we're conducting it at the in a little conference room at Indian River Club. But my thought was, when the intergenerational facility is completed, that would be an ideal location to have my South County update. And so I guess one question I have to ask the board, would you all let me have my meetings there without paying a fee?
No, I think, no, any event that's for the commission for dealing with our governmental matters will not pay.
Okay.
The way I think that, I think anything that we're dealing with that is under our purview to get our job done, like having public meetings, having anything dealing with the business that we do as a government, there will be no charge. We're not charging ourselves.
For example, the Vero Lake Estates Property Owners Association, they use a room at the North County Library for their monthly meetings. What do we charge them?
It depends. Our smaller rooms at the library have no charge, and then they run up $25 an hour and up to 50, depending on the size of the room.
See, that's a property owners association.
Yeah, that would be
monthly meeting. That's that's a nonprofit.
Yeah, and that's why I don't believe basically they have it to where it's sealed off from the rest of the library. I think you walk in.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're able to seal it off, and then they go out like the back door when because it's at 8:30 or whenever the meeting's over, and but that's.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be any different as far as what you're doing there, to be able to have your meetings.
I think they are at HOA hosting a meeting. I would be doing this as community outreach as a
Now, let's
commissioner.
say you had a meeting on the paving, let's say the milling program for the whole community and around, and they wouldn't have to rent a room.
Okay.
Now, if a particular homeowners association wants, which we do have, they pay to rent a room in the library. Now, if we call a meeting to go over what we're doing as a community outreach and keep them current, they don't have to pay. That's the different. And we have a lot of people rent our library rooms for meetings just like that.
We do, and the Fairgrounds policy addresses that scenario just the way Joe explained it, and that'll be adapted to this.
Well, if you could reserve me a room first Monday of every month, 5:30. Actually,
Certainly.
everybody down there is real excited to get in there and take a look at it. So
maybe the big gymnasium room the
So-
first time?
Oh, yeah, I think it'll be sold out.
So probably the bottom multi-purpose room, as you can see, splits into thirds and 72, or maybe.
Or even
I'm
that
not
little
sure.
game room.
Yeah.
Room 125, yeah.
Depending on what's in there. Okay. So this is the overview. As you can see, the gymnasium is the crown jewel. The asterisks in the middle are known as BAFs, also known as very large fans.
Oh yeah. I've seen, and they got a very different name too.
That's the name of the company.
I
yes.
love
There's
it.
BAFs, yes.
But they have arrived in River County. You got to go to a livestock barn to see these and appreciate them.
So you see there's 4 over the gymnasium area and 2 in the 2 smaller ones, that's a bleachered area right there. And then, and Mike, why don't you just walk them from left to right and what those different rooms are?
Sure. And just for your orientation, the rooms on the far left are on the west end of the building, and then moving to the east side of the long side of the building. The 2, I don't know if this one does, yeah. These 2 rooms, this room right here is the multi-purpose room that can split in half here. And you can see the divider going through. We have the heating kitchen in this area here. And there are restrooms in all sections of the building. This is one of the restroom area here. This will be a reception area where we will have also the library computers in this area along each of these walls. This is all office space in this area here. And then again, as you go down this wing, you have the game room. We do have a mechanical room for air conditioning and things here. Restroom areas. And then this is our long multi-purpose room that can be split into 3 divisions, which will be very good for having large meetings, but then also it will give us the opportunity to split it for different organizations to be able to come in or classes. And then our bamboo room, or activity room, will be on the end. And another part of this that we haven't really talked about, this long area right here will all be paved. It will be covered. It will be shaded at all parts of the year. And it is also lit, so it will give us another aspect to being able to hold fundraisers or activities along that long concreted area there. So
Right.
we're really looking forward to that.
And that overlooks the water feature and the lacrosse field, so it's a nice venue.
And on the where the very large fans are, the 2 full-size basketball courts. What size volleyball? How many? Is it just 2 volleyball? Or is a volleyball court as big as a basketball? I don't know.
It's smaller than that. Actually, they'll be able to fit 4 volleyball courts on there.
Okay, and we've already had the holes in
There
for
will
4?
be the holes in there, yes.
So they could literally have 4 games going with 8
Yes.
teams at each time.
Yes, and then we also have the drop-down net between the 2 basketball courts, actually, that will run this way,
So
across
they
the
can-
court, and then also a concession stand in this area right here.
Okay.
Also.
What, as far as some indoor gymnastics, with as I understand it, they need a 24-foot ceiling,
Yes.
and we'll have that, correct?
Yeah, actually, it's 25.
Okay.
For most basketball and volleyball
Okay.
competitions, and yes, we will have that.
And with that said, for gymnastics, what kind of balance beams, whatever you call that, accoutrements, well, I guess is the best way to, what kind of...
Well, we will have a covering for the floor, and then most of the gymnastics groups that come in will bring their own equipment.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
and most of them either rent it or bring it with them. And yes, it is large enough to be able to do those types of floor events and everything that go along with the gymnastics.
And that's air conditioned too, correct? It can't be.
This gymnasium is air conditioned, yes.
Right.
And the reason for the BAF fans.
Yes.
I was going to cut the AC out. And I got outvoted.
Want a surprise face again?
Got those big fans.
If you're going to work out, you might as well break a good sweat, right?
That's right.
That's
why I don't
okay.
work out.
Any other questions on the layout? Moving right along. Okay, so these are some opportunities we have. What you see on the first top of this slide are actual scheduled booked events. See, we have 3 sports tourism events already booked and some of our regular programming that will be moving there. Now, nice thing about the 2 dances is we currently have to go out and pay what used to be the Polish American Club a fee to have our event there, and we can now hold these in-house. And so we can keep the price affordable. We still charge $35 for a daddy-daughter dance, including dinner and music and party features and all that great stuff that just makes the best memories you'll ever have. But we can keep those price points in place, but still make the event pay for itself. And on the bottom, you'll see these are actually events we've made contact with. They're not closed yet, but we've actually spoken with them. Moving along, these are target...
Wait, go back to that. I wasn't finished with that.
Certainly.
Okay.
Okay. And then these are more targeted areas that once we get our staff up and running, we're going to be doing our outreach program to attract them and make them aware of what we have. The budget. We've worked with Jason and Mike to come up with some estimates for total revenue, personnel operating. What you see in the second column is what's going to get us from June through the end of the fiscal year, and then projecting for 2016-17. We're being very conservative, we feel, on the revenue estimates because we think the phone's going to be ringing based on what's going on at the fairgrounds. We think it's going to be in high demand, but we just won't know till we're into it for 6 months or so. But we do think it's going to be close the gap between revenue and expenses.
Mike, refresh my memory for me. The alcohol ordinance that we passed, we listed specific public venues, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we did.
And is the IG a part of that?
Not necessarily public venues. We specifically listed Sandridge Fairgrounds and the
garage
and the IG Center. And
that's what my question is. IG is on there. We did the parking garage by the courthouse too, didn't we? Was that on there? It doesn't matter. I'm just making sure.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But you know, that always raises the question. I mean, a lot of venues hold and maintain their own alcohol license under the Board of County Commissioners exception to one of the 4 pages of different types of alcohol licenses that you can hold. We used to have it at Sandridge. But when you bring on a vendor, the law requires you to extinguish the existing. You can never have 2 licenses on one property. So given our approach to staffing, which has always been conservative, we intend to open up with skeleton crew, not get into that business per se, but bring in vendors like we do at the fairgrounds, and then later we can revisit it. Because what happens is the employees have to serve it. So we feel it's best to take the 15% commission. We've gone to that model in some of our food vending operations throughout the county. It seems to be working. It's not maximizing the profits, but then you got to look at your employee costs too, which are always, not conducive to that business model. unless you're in the business. We want it to be ancillary. We don't want to be in the bar business. Okay. Budget. And then the staff proposal, as I said, very conservative, 4 new positions. Of course, we need a venue manager who's going to be the exempt employee that basically lives there and is responsible for the day-to-day operations. And works with 1 business support specialist, which is a fancy term for a staff assistant. But the key part of that staff assistant is it will be the volunteer coordinator. And we really feel the success of this facility is going to live and die with our ability to engage the senior population, to serve it on a volunteer basis. And so that person, in addition to doing the business functions and working with some of the contracts, supporting the venue manager, handling some of the requisitions and all the things that staff assistants do, we want them to coordinate those volunteers. And of course, 1 recreation leader to cover the programming going on inside the building, and then a trades worker for not only custodial and maintenance, but a lot of setup and breakdown that occurs for different rooms and setup. So we'll rent some tables and chairs, we'll be setting them up, and they'll be working at least 5 of those days on site. Now remember, this is a 7-day operation, probably 360 days. Questions on staffing? And there you have it. We've reached the end. We recommend you approve the Intergenerational Center Ops Plan. We'll bring you back a policy, just like the one in the Fairgrounds, probably on consent, very similar to the one you approved earlier today.
Thank you. I'll ask if any member of the commission has any questions.
I have one. As we move towards the grand opening date, to communicate with Dick Bird and his travel schedules between here and Cow Country and Montana, I believe, to hopefully he can be here for the official ribbon cutting.
I already have communicated with him. He doesn't think, in fact, I talked to him a couple of months ago, and I've met with him several times, and we've been discussing it.
Okay. And secondly, if we have our grand opening activities, something that might incorporate the state champion girls basketball team might be something to show off our new courts.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Although remember, several of them will be gone.
Yeah. But yeah,
This
it
won't
depends
be
when it's
until the
finished.
fall, I think.
No, I think there we're looking at
June?
June.
Yeah, so the May 22nd, substantial completion, looking at certificate of occupancy by June 23rd.
So maybe
That's,
close.
Peter, that's my wife's anniversary.
Well, I would ask you while you're all here, would you prefer we open it softly for a few weeks and then once
Right.
we have some momentum, then schedule a grand opening that meets all of your approval for dates? Would that be your preference, or you want to do it? You don't want to do it right at CIA?
Let's
What's your
talk
thought,
about,
Joe?
I've got a different idea.
Let's see
I'd
if
like to do it
finishes
before
on schedule.
Mr. Baird retires. I mean, or maybe we'll just invite him back.
I killed the party.
At this point, I'm going to ask if there's anybody from the
you want a
public who
month
wants
after I
to
leave.
speak on this item. Anybody from the public want to speak on this item?
Move staff recommendation to approve the operational plan.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll now take a break for lunch for 25 minutes. Millings Project, 65th Street to 67th Street. Hello, Mr. Mora.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Mora, Public Works Director. This is a petition millings request for 51st Avenue. 51st Avenue is a local road within Winter Beach Highlands subdivision. It stretches a half a mile between South Winter Beach Road, or 65th Street, and North Winter Beach Road, or 69th Street. In that half mile, the north quarter mile is paved, the south quarter mile is not. And it's that south quarter mile that the residents got together and submitted a petition to put millings on that roadway. It was a successful petition, whether you look at it by the number of property owners or the square footage of approval properties. It came in over the 66 and 66, the 2/3 percentage, 66.67%. They've opted for the economy version of millings, which is, excuse me, basically just putting millings where the dirt is today. No roadway improvements, no shoulder improvements, no drainage improvements, just basically put millings where the dirt road is today. We've costed it out. Total project cost $74,731. 3/4 of that would be paid by the property owners, 1/4 would be paid by the county. What we're asking today, oh, and we did have one public hearing with the public information meeting with the petitioners back in February 3rd. And what we're asking today is for the board to consider adopting a resolution to provide the millings, allocate the county's percentage, the 1/4 of the cost, the county's percentage, which is $18,683. And then the third thing is adopt a resolution setting the time and place of the public hearing for May 3rd.
Any questions for Chris?
Chris, I was in the, and I know this will probably come up again, but I was actually in the Habitat Restore and got, Mrs. Bell had approached me about her concerns and how I guess she's got several lots there. And I think she threw out the number to me that it was going to be something like $7,000 per parcel.
No, I don't think it's that high.
6,000? And I know we don't have the official figures right now, but I mean, as
yeah, I don't have the official figures, but if the total is 74,000 to be distributed among 25 property owners, it can't be that high. It's probably on the order of 3,000 or 4,000.
But actually, be 56,000 distributed between property owners.
True, only the
fair share portion. I'll pull it up real quick and you'll tell me how much she's got.
That's their share as well.
Right.
She's about 7,000 total for both lots.
That's what it was before I got to
they're over total number of lots, yeah, because she had multiple lots.
Right.
Any other questions for Chris? I'll open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak on this item. Nobody from the public. Mr. Feingold.
Commissioner Sawyer, thank you. I just had one clarification question for Mr. Mora. Mr. Mora, the recommendation today, that includes the amended resolution, which incorporates the full description of the road and the acknowledgement that the assessment roll has actually been prepared. Is that correct?
That's correct. We made those changes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
And I guess I'm just trying to figure out a way to soften the blow for Mrs. Bell as a widow. And I don't know whether we could either do it by the lineal foot, which probably ain't going to change much, or the other way is per parcel acre?
It's per parcel acre, which is by square feet of property. Versus linear feet.
Yeah.
How much of a difference would that make?
We'd have to calculate that out. We talked about that at the public information meeting with the residents, and they opted for the by square foot.
What, front footage?
Or no, by square foot of parcel.
Okay.
By per acre.
Yeah. That's a tough one for me. I mean, I'll go ahead and move it forward for it to come to the public hearing, but I don't know where I am on it.
Motion for Commissioner Davis, second of Commissioner Flesher. Any other questions of staff or any questions in general? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Chris. We now move on to County Attorney's Matters. B, necessity of take resolution for a parcel of property located on the south side of 53rd Street, west of Old Dixie Highway. Mr. DeBrawl.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. We have here a resolution for take concerning a parcel of property on 53rd Street by the old Jenkins sand mine. If you take a look at the monitors, you'll see the location of the parcel where it's going to be the new 53rd Street. The area of take that we're looking for in our resolution today is at the area between the street itself and the yellow boundary. Back when we went ahead and purchased this property, we purchased 100 feet of right-of-way plus, or 150 feet of right-of-way for 53rd Street. We also secured a 100-foot temporary construction easement for construction of the road. What we have found out since that time is that our soil used to support the road is not temporary at all, it's permanent, and it's there in the temporary construction easement. I can show you the location of the soil, highlighted by the crossed section there. That would represent the area that is between the road and the yellow line. The Jenkins estate filed suit against the county a few years ago, claiming inverse condemnation on this parcel. What outside counsel Mr. Doney and I have decided to do was go ahead and institute the necessity of the take, go ahead and make the firm offer that's required based on the appraisal that will be forthcoming, and go ahead and turn this into a eminent domain matter rather than an inverse condemnation matter. The parcel of property here that we need, we don't want to take fee simple title to. We only want to take an easement to this, a slope easement, so that in the future, if Mr. Jenkins or the Jenkins estate continues to fill in the pond as they have over time, that they would be able to fill in over our easement. The easement is only needed to support the road. If we would remove the soil that is trespassing onto the Jenkins property, we would have to support it with some sort of retaining wall or something like that at great expense for the long linear expanse of this area. So that's why we're going ahead with the necessity of take and the eminent domain process. As you know, the factors that the board must consider in an eminent domain take are safety, it'd be safety, cost, alternative routes, long-range planning, and environmental concerns. This matter has been before the board on several different occasions. In the late 80s, 53rd Street was added to the county's road plan. Right-of-way was purchased for the property in 2004. Right-of-way west of the lateral H Canal was obtained from Waterway Village. In 2008, North American Properties / Publix agreed to share improvement costs of 53rd, and you can see the other times that this matter has been before the board in all or in part. So what we're asking today is that the board go ahead and approve the resolution and necessity, giving outside counsel the authority to file suit in the county's name in eminent domain for a slope easement for the party described in the resolution. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Well, start with Commissioner Zork.
Yes, Bill, we all know what happens when you start the eminent domain process. This is a little bit unique where it could potentially revert back. Is there a compensation amount the Jenkins estate is looking for to where we could do something without having to go the expensive eminent domain process?
Yes, they've offered somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $400,000 as far as the purchase of the property.
All of it?
Pardon me?
All of it?
No, just the area needed.
And what's the square footage of that?
It's a little, I think it's about 2 acres, 2.6 acres.
And based on I'm trying to think of what would be a 66th Avenue taking case cost that we've completed, let's say the people at 45th Street and 66th, trying to decide what they're asking versus what we're going to pay in legal cost. Is there a way to somehow come out? Because when we pay the legal fees and then we pay the property owner's legal fees, we don't get any benefit from that, and the property owner doesn't get any benefit from that.
Right.
So I'm trying to see, is there a way to meet somewhere in the process without actually having to spend all the money that doesn't do anybody any benefit?
And that's zoned IL?
Probably.
Yes.
Or IG?
It's industrial zoning.
Guys, $2.65 a foot is not bad for industrial zone property.
Well, the other thing that you have to consider is that this is submerged property. It's really pretty much useless until somebody starts to put some dirt on top of it.
Which they are, though.
Which we have also.
Yeah,
we
but-
have also put fill on top of the property in this instance.
Back to Commissioner Zork's point, though, how much do you think both sides are going to pay in legal fees and expert witnesses, et cetera, over the course of this process? And how much would you think is a reasonable amount for the easement?
Up to mediation, I would anticipate that both sides will spend a total of $110,000 on expert fees.
And how much do you think
Probably not each.
Okay.
It'd probably be about $40,000 on our part, about $70,000 on their part.
and how much does the county feel that this easement is worth? I mean, you did talk with them and offer some number, didn't you?
We have not. We have not obtained an appraisal of the property or anything else. We're not to that point.
Well,
The
then we can't make a
litigation
real
is-
decision. I mean, because if the number is over $100,000, I'm not saying it is. Well, what ballpark?
Refresh my...
No. Today, we're only after the resolution of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
That
starts the
resolution will authorize, the resolution will authorize.
Okay, so I'll rephrase it. I mean, before you come back again,
Yes.
we'd have to get a good idea of what the economics of it are. I'll just drop it at that and go back to the resolution of authorization. I apologize for taking us off the track a little bit.
That's okay.
So with that, I believe we have a motion and a second.
No,
Nope.
not yet.
Nope,
Oh,
not yet.
don't go mad.
Get that far.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. DeBraw?
Well, let me, in reaching out to the owners, which that may be where we're going, is say, because I think if we move this forward, I think the ball starts rolling and the posturing on both sides takes place. I'd rather try one or maybe one or more visits with them and say, look, at the end of the day, 3 years from now or 5 years from now, you might get X. I think we still have to have an appraisal.
I think Mr. DeBraw understands that portion of it. I think he got
Yes. And please remember that the estate has already filed suit against us. There's an ongoing court case where they claim damages as a result of us filling on their property.
Right.
They have hired an appraisal and they have given us a number. We have not finished our appraisal process yet. This is the first step where we would get the authorization to proceed with filing the necessary motions that we would need to get the order of take. We will come back to you to make that firm offer to them based on an appraisal. That will be the next step that we will take there. But for today's purposes, we just need permission to file the suit and hire the experts necessary to conduct the lawsuit.
Well, I think the administrator can have an appraisal done to know
Yes.
where we stand without having to start the process.
Well, to the commissioner and to Bill's point, the process has really started.
On their side, I see.
They
Yes.
filed the lawsuit claiming an inverse condemnation claim. We essentially, what we're doing with this is we're changing that from an inverse claim where they're suing us as to whether we've taken the property or not, to exemplary turning it into a takings claim. And certainly we will continue to move forward consistent with all the other requirements. But the process has already begun by them filing the lawsuit. And we're essentially now putting it into an eminent domain case and putting it in its proper form.
I'd still rather, before I put it in an eminent domain posture, that that we.
But we're already there in an inverse case.
And I think what we would recommend at this point is after we get our appraisal accomplished and we have a number, we'll bring the matter back before the board to make that firm offer to them that we must by statute. And we would either proceed to settlement negotiations at that point or go ahead with mediation.
Do we have a copy of their appraisal that they have done so far? Do they share us?
Yes.
What kind of value does it have?
It like I said, it ranges in value from about $300,000 to $400,000 based on various different claims of damages.
Sure.
Okay. Counselor,
yes.
So what you're saying is that we don't really have a choice. I mean, I can see a willingness, and I share that too, of seeing if there's an 11th hour. There is no 11th hour here. We're already at game time. So there really is no choice today. We just have to move forward, and you need authorization to move forward.
Yes. What this will do is put us a little bit on the offensive if we can in an eminent domain situation. Here and I see your smile, Mr. Chairman.
Let me help you. I like that. I like the opportunity to use a sports analogy. As I see it, this just gives us better field position.
Yes, that's a very good analogy.
Well, there's hope for you.
I mean, I can reach back. Yeah.
At that juncture, motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second from Commissioner O'Brien. Any other discussion?
Question for the attorney.
Yes, sir.
And maybe it's a procedural side, so it may go over here before it goes back to you. A vote for or against this motion keeps a commissioner from doing what in the future on this topic if they want to bring it back up for some other reason?
Well, the only concern I would have is that we're in the context of litigation.
Right.
And so the best advice I would say is let's allow the county attorney's office to work with our outside counsel on eminent domain matters, then work through the process and bring it back.
Right.
I think that's just the best way to handle litigation matters as opposed to any other form of process from the commission side.
Okay.
Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? There not being one, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Bill, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question of Bill.
Yes.
Procedurally, somehow we had some discussions back and forth and we didn't come to a conclusion, and they filed a case against us. And I think what I'm kind of trying to pound home is we've got to figure out how to get in and try to maybe, when possible, and I know with some of the people on 66th Avenue negotiating with them, the only option was the full-blown eminent domain taking because there wasn't a dialogue opportunity.
Oh, yeah, there was.
Yeah, just
I mean, there was a lot of dialogue. The only one that went all the way flat to the Met and then through appeal would have been the Bethel property.
right. Okay. Is if there's a way once they make the commitment and the mental mindset for them to file against us, they're kind of all in by that point, is to try to, when possible, resolve it before it gets to
that's
that
basically
point.
that's why we just did what we did, is because they did file against us. Normally,
I'm trying to get in there before they file.
No, they already filed.
Well, no, I mean in the future.
In the future.
Another parcel,
Clearly.
another place.
Clearly,
right?
if we didn't have a pending
Calm
litigation.
down. I mean, our attorney has already grasped all of that.
Right.
And given that we're in negotiations, I really don't think it helps us to go any further. I mean, I don't think.
Talking about this piece.
No,
anything.
we're talking about the whole piece
And
where we're going with it as a county.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner
agree
Zork,
with Commissioner Ward.
our office is very mindful of the expense that is eminent domain. Every time we are faced with a take of a property, we strive to settle out of court, settle short of filing suit, because as this board has told our office on many occasions, that is what their desire is. So that's what we're aiming for in every single opportunity.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dubrow.
Thank you.
We've had 14B or earlier, and I take it, Commissioner O'Brien, that takes care of your matters,
Yes, Mr.
14B.
Chairman.
So we move to Commissioner Zork's community residential homes.
Yes, group homes. Part of this reason I put this item on today was, and Bill might need to stay close by for this. Recently, I had some residents come in after they figured out or were made aware that there was going to be a group home placed in their community. That also was not the first group home complaint I had. I had another one off of 100th Avenue. In looking at group homes and short-term rentals, very similar set of circumstances. They apply to the state, they get their license from the state. We don't really have any approval portion in the process. We don't know what the definition of who the group will be. There's many appropriate uses for the group homes: Baptist Retirement Center, Teen Challenge, and there's a lot of good uses in the nonprofit world that use group homes to provide great services. But what I tend to see is in the southern area, Martin County, St. Lucie County, they apparently have been clamping down on them, so some of the operators in the for-profit world are starting to move up into Indian River County and place group homes, and the neighbors kind of find out about it when it opens, and they wonder why there's 5 or 6 people living in a house next door to them. The first complaint I had prior to the more recent one, when a home is being really operated as a business, and I've got the calls for service from the Sheriff's Department of 19 responses. This is excluding fire and EMS over the last 12-month period. Obviously, there's something going on. There's something happening. There's something that the neighbors are not happy with. And again, they find out it's approved by the state. It's being operated by an entity from St. Lucie or Martin County or Palm Beach, and there's not much. Our hands are kind of tied with them. On the current application, after doing some investigation with the building department, we found that there were some modifications that had been applied for to be done. And Scott said there's also a number of other regulations that they need to be in compliance of. When we don't know that they're being approved by the state, they're missing a kind of a vital screening process in the permitting side. So another area of concern that Stan Bowling's been trying to help identify is we have, at least as of when I put the agenda item in, we had not been able to secure a list of group homes in the community. We did get a list, but it was Baptist Retirement Center, Teen Challenge, Imagine After School Program was on the group home list, which I'm not quite sure why. But the known properties that we knew were not on the list, so we know that was not a full list. So in addressing the concerns of the more recent concerned neighbors, there's 2 areas of concern. One, we don't know how many these are in the community. If the one that I'm aware of has a high number of Sheriff's Department responses from a variety of call types, and I don't have the code to decode each of these, it's clearly not being operated harmoniously in a residential neighborhood when you're having that many law enforcement responses to a single family house. Secondly, the current neighbors, the one house that's being licensed as a group home, the person also owns the home next door. There's a concern that they could apply a unity of title, have 2 homes now on one property, be exempt of the 1,000-foot rule separation between group homes, and essentially have 2 homes with 12 people, 6 in each, or potentially 5 in each, plus the caretaker occupying the home. And once it's licensed, my understanding, once it's licensed as a group home, the group definition, it could be Alzheimer's patients 1 month, next month it could be early release inmate system. It could, once you have the group, it doesn't define what kind of group you get to work with, to my understanding. So I wanted to see if we could have staff look into the problem a little bit more and see if we can get some information from the state, some information from Representative Mayfield's office possibly, since the state, along with short-term rentals, has again, permits these things without our knowledge and our awareness, and that the ones that are permitted that were permitted by the state that did not file for any building department review, what do we do about the ones that are operating that potentially are not code compliant?
And Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Commissioner, if I could, I mean, I think the way to start this would probably just do a public records request from the state. Now, which department, I don't know where we'd go with that, but I'd ask several questions. Give them the address of the property. So like any and all correspondence that has to do with that address.
Just for the record, County Community Development Director Stan Bowling. About 3 weeks ago, I spoke with and followed up with a few emails to the Agency for Persons with Disabilities to get their list. What we're really, I think, trying to focus on is a list of the single-family type of homes, the smaller group homes that, although preempted by state regulations, would still be subject to building code requirements for group homes, and have not been successful in getting that list. You know, they had to create it and cut it down from a larger list for Indian River County. We'll be glad to have assistance in asking for that list. That would be the easiest way to go if we can get the overall list, and then check and see. We really don't know how many are on that list. That's why we're asking for it, and to check and see if there are any that have not gotten proper building permitting for it. But again, the smaller group homes are ones that are preempted by Florida Statute 419, and you're correct, they don't start with us. We don't get notified unless the licensee or the issuing agency informs us. So there are really, I think, two actions that would be appropriate. One is to secure the list and then check with the building department to see that they're complying. And the second is to make sure there's a process of notification to the county so that we can keep track of where these are. So that's what we're trying to do at the moment.
And Stan, it seems like there are two avenues for them. Both go to the state legislature, but the first one, I think, would just be asking for help from Representative Mayfield's office to ask them further for that, and that's basically to get the list of them. For notification, that sounds like it'll probably have to be a change in state law, very possibly, but I think that just articulating the problem to Representative Mayfield would be the first step. And so I don't even know if you need a motion for that.
Would this be state law, or is this under the Individuals with Disabilities Act? Is it federal?
You're right. There's more than one act, and I'll defer the attorneys. I mean, Fair Housing Act does also, I think, with respect to case law and some other things, apply, you know, essentially countrywide. But there is a preemption in Florida statutes that is germane, that probably applies to a number of group homes. But again, we don't know how many that is in our county at this point.
And speaking with some people here that are concerned about the issue, they were concerned about maybe the insurance, et cetera. Is that something that statute exempts them from? I mean, I know you don't have to have insurance, I guess. You can be self-insured, or just if something happens, you're liable. But is there anything in our code or state code that says if you're a group home, you've got to have a specific type of insurance?
Right. I think that would probably be a question for the state licensing requirement itself. Okay. Not, again, we're preempted. We have to, under Florida Statute 419, from a zoning standpoint, we have to treat that home as any other single-family home. Make no distinction. They meet the zoning setbacks like any other single-family home, and that's it. We treat them like that. So I think that would be a licensing requirement. There was one other item that came up that I just wanted to make sure that's not in a single-family zoning district. You can only have one house on one lot. So if there's a concern about a unity of title, now we're going to have a second home, you would not comply with zoning requirements. And that's the same for a conventional single-family home as it would be a home being used for a group home. So that could not happen, that scenario, in a single-family zoning district.
I guess it wouldn't happen if we find out after the fact that a unity of title applied to the state for the second home, we wouldn't know till potentially after the fact.
That's
they would
correct.
Have to unravel.
So, no, you're exactly right. So getting the list from the state and then getting a process where we get notified, I think, is where we need to be.
Right.
Okay, Joe, are you good with that under consensus, or do you want us to have a motion for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
We're good on consensus.
We're really the only venue that the residents have of this community whenever they have something like this. And it's hard enough for us to be able to get answers for them behind this Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. And so it's bad enough for the residents, but it's even worse whenever they're getting the government runaround. So everything we can do to try to stop that is where I think this entire board is.
Right. And the other complicating issue is that there are 3 different state agencies that may put a group home, a group residential home in a neighborhood.
Just 3?
Wow, budget cuts.
That's all I have found so far in my research.
Now, don't be surprised if you come across a couple more.
And that's why Representative Mayfield's help would really be beneficial in this matter.
And if I could, since Scott has been patiently kind of sitting in the meeting most of the day, could you kind of touch on, Scott, just some of the basic requirements on the group homes? And also, just to put it in a frame of mind, a out-of-town property owner can buy a home. he can pay his manager, if you'd like. They have to take only a 12-hour class to become the, I guess, the home custodian, to be there while the occupants are there. And I know that on the one on 100th Avenue, they've had the person that was the resident custodian of the facility, and custodian's probably not the right word, but the caretaker, actually quit and left the occupants to fend for themselves. And that obviously, when they all got out of the house, called the sheriff's department, tried to figure out where was the person in charge. Well, they quit and left and didn't tell anybody, and the people kind of escaped from the home that they were in and were wandering through the neighborhood. So again, the state's not going to catch this stuff, and we're the ones that are here, and we can help these folks. But Scott, what's some of the things that, you know, since this discussion has started, that the group home people need to know that they need to provide if they want to operate this way?
First of all, for the record, Scott McAdam, building official. A lot of information, so I'm not sure how much you need to know at this point in time. A couple basic things. Be aware that we have the Florida Building Code that regulates all construction. And then we have an exemption to the Florida Building Code, which is the residential code. The residential code covers 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhomes, up to 3 stories. So all these small group homes, because now we need to categorize group homes. You can have large ones and small ones. So only a small one with 5 or less can be in a regular 1 and 2 family dwelling. Anything else would be regulated possibly as an institution under an I occupancy, or under a larger residential with more criteria, like over 5 and less than 16. Over 16, you jump into I. So there's a lot of information, but there are group occupancies that if they change from the residential code and go over to the building code, then anything regulated by the building code has to be sprinkled. So that's one regulation.
Sprinklered?
Sprinkler system.
If that's over 5?
No, if it's not something that's solely regulated by the residential code, like a single-family dwelling or like a townhome. So we mentioned vacation rentals. Vacation rentals are regulated as a single family. They can be under the residential code.
Right.
But say a small group home, so it's a group home, it could be a boarding house, there's a bunch of different categories. That would be in the building code under one of the residential occupancy types, and there's 4 different residential occupancy types. It could be a 1, it could be a hotel that's transient, a 2, so there's different categories. So they'd either fall under an R3 or an R4. So an R4 has some area restrictions. So you go to our table that we use for the size of the building, and it would regulate the size of that building. An R3 is unlimited, so you can build a gigantic R3. And there's some fire alarm issues that are different between R4 and R3. So all depending on exactly what we want to call this certain group home. So a group home that you're probably regulating in neighborhoods would be a small group home, 5 or less. So that's treated as an R3, or a care facility, which is also could be 5 or less. So then we're in the building code under R3, a care facility that is sprinkled, that the R3 could be unlimited in size. So there's alarm systems, there's certain criteria that's different. So it would be an occupancy change, because if you change from like a business to a mercantile, or a business to a residence, that's an occupancy change. If you change from residence 1 through 4, you change from 1 to 2, that's a subcategory change. So that now sends you over to a 3rd code book, the existing building code, which you use chapter 10 of that code book, and that regulates occupancy changes, which now that the house might be changing to a different occupancy type, they need to show structural stuff like floor loads, it could be window protection for windborne debris, and electrical type issues. So depending on how much information you need, we're talking about small group homes, 5 or less, and it's going to be regulated by the building code, which the big issue all the time comes up, sprinkler system. How do you sprinkle a residential home?
Right. All right, thank you. So once we have the secure list that at least has 2 properties that we know should be on the list. Then we'll know we have a list that it seems to be covering most of these. And then we'll run it by you and see if your department, if they applied for any permits or anything that would tell us if they may be in compliance. And those rules are there to protect the occupants. That's the primary goal, the life safety side.
That's true.
So we want to help make sure that they're in compliance with that. I don't have any other questions of Scott, unless anybody else does.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move on to your second item then.
I will, but I think, is there anybody in the audience that wants to add anything to this? Since you've patiently been here since 9 o'clock this morning.
Tim Askew is my name, and I live in that neighborhood, and it's a cul-de-sac. And the house is down on the end of it, so that means that any ambulances or any fire equipment or police or anybody that goes in there has got to go down one of the other roads that lead to this. There's no other way out. So that causes a problem. And the second thing is, this guy has a business on 10th Avenue. And it's a group home. And this is a group home. And he's got a mortgage, and it requires him to have insurance. It's a private mortgage. So therefore, he's doing business as, I don't have the information in front of me, but Sylvia something or other. And he's got, in Port St. Lucie, he's got group homes as well. It seems to me like he's got to have business insurance if he's doing business as. And there's no proof of that anywhere that I know of. So therefore, I just want to bring that up to be a, an agenda point, that he doesn't show any insurance, and he's got a state license. We didn't find out about it until several months after he got a mortgage for the place. And plus, he lives on 10th Court. So he's doing business on 10th Avenue and also on 8th Place, I think it is, 8th Street or 8th Place, which is a very short little street in Glendale Lakes, which is a well-established community. And plus, the residents are older, and they can't tolerate people that run around the neighborhood, schizos or whatever. And according to what we've read, he can take just about anybody in, and his wife works in a clinic. So she can refer these people to the group home. Not to mention that it's got court-appointed people that go in there as well, into this group home. And from what I understand, he had 6, but now it's 5. But still, it's
I
a
think
problem.
one other concern that was brought up when we met with the residents from in there, and thank you guys for, I mean, you, in a short notice, you turned out a large group of people in your petition as well, that anything, depending on the type of people they put in the group home, it backs up to the Glendale Elementary behind it, so that would not be a good place for paroled sexual offenders or those type of folks. And I know we have to figure out in our communities where those people can live,
Right.
but adjacent to an elementary school would probably not be the
Well,
appropriate
it's
spot.
in between 2 schools and a church.
Don't sexual offenders have to register with the sheriff's department with certain things they can't do anyway? Okay, so I mean, that's not a problem. Let's just take that one off the table.
Wow. Does Baker mean Baker acted, you think?
I think. He's looking at I've received, I think it was Friday, an updated incident log for the one in another area just to see what the recent calls for service. And again, that's excluding ambulance and fire. There's quite a few.
Yes, it is. If anybody wants a copy of this, I'll just...
Yeah, and actually, I can give one without the chicken scratch all over it.
Actually,
for
if
the
they
record.
want it, with it being a
So
public record...
we'll
they'll change
try
it.
to secure the list, then we'll check for building permits, and maybe we can see under the state application, do they have to provide some proof of insurance with it? And then once we have some of this
But it
information-
says right on that one form, doing business as. So therefore, he's got to have business insurance. And on the mortgage, it only states that he's got to have homeowner's insurance.
And once we get some of these answers, we'll send copies to everybody that's on the petition list, all 4 pages of those. We'll send out paper copies to those we don't have email addresses for, and the rest we'll send out by email.
Okay.
And see what we can do to stay on top of this so it doesn't potentially get out of hand from us.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Great, thank you for...
All right.
And one thing that will be easier in the future is you'll be able to go to the property appraiser's website and type in an address, a mailing address.
Right.
And that way it'll show you all like the short-term rentals.
Mhm.
Because the one thing they all have in common is where they get their tax bill.
Right, yes.
We'll move on to Commissioner Zork's second item.
Yes.
Is that kind of like a flip phone, Wesley, or is there more of a modern smartphone?
Very similar to it.
Yeah.
Next item, I've talked about over probably the last year or so that we have some property that we probably purchased for a particular use. That use is no longer being pursued, or we've made improvements and don't need some of the areas that we've purchased. And I'd like, from a housekeeping standpoint, we either need to say, yes, we need these, no, we don't. If we don't, do we surplus them? What's the process for moving through that? Also, then the proceeds of the sales from some of these, I'd prefer to see them pointed towards something versus going into the general fund. But the 5 parcels I have that are in question to at least clear up would be the 3 parking lots that we own on 17th Street in front of a number of businesses that we purchased for the widening of 17th Street. That road has been widened. It's not in the plan to be made wider than the 4 lanes that it is. So we have I think it's 3 parking lots and a portion of an alley that we have on 17th Street. Procedurally, since we took all those properties, those parking lots from those buildings, do we get appraisals? This is a question. Do we get appraisals, go back to the current property owner and say, look, we purchased this from a prior property owner. It's now been declared surplus. Here's the appraisal. Do you want to purchase it back? And then what happens if they say no? That's a question that would have to be dealt with. That's on those 3.
Commissioner, if I could ask, whereabouts are the properties that you're talking about on 17th? So just so we
That would be in front of the radio station, and I think there's a thrift store.
Okay.
And then there's another, and I don't know the occupant of the one next
So
to
you're
that.
talking basically between
Where you
those
from,
one and-
Old-
Old Dixie and 14th.
Old Dixie and the railroad track.
Old Dixie to the railroad track.
On the south, I don't think there's any on the north side, but we probably should look, and if there is, I know we did a stormwater retention pond on a portion on the north side of the street.
What's interesting there, and I don't know, we're fixing to put a transit facility there on city property.
It's a little bit to the west where it wouldn't help us.
At all, not even a turning lane?
I don't think so, but we should probably look at that just to be sure.
Because if it goes all the way to the city property, a decel lane right through there would make that a very nice
That could.
addition to...
And again, that would be kind of the checklist process to go through, but that would be a good point to have. In the question in the interim, do we want to have an interim lease with these people that at least says they have to provide insurance and list the county as additional insured or something if there's an incident that happens in the parking lot, slip and fall? Right now, I'd say we're basically on the hook since we own the property, they don't. The other 2 parcels is to have the county attorney spend a little bit more time with the city attorney to identify really who owns and who has rights to the Ocean Drive parking lot. Again, that we were brought into a lawsuit because somebody slipped and fell.
Tell me about where that is on Ocean Drive.
You know where Nito's is? Let's
Seacoast Bank? It's that parking lot in the front.
You go at the back door of Seacoast to face the ocean. It's between.
Well, let's start with Nino's because this is food and you'll understand where he's going from there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Whoa.
So
Yeah.
you come out of Nino's
Right.
and you take a left going down outside.
So this is South Beach.
No,
Yes.
Nino.
Well, the
No,
Hummuston.
it's just
Yeah.
Hummuston. That's not South Beach.
Well, for me it is.
Well, that's why we're trying to narrow it down to something you know, because obviously you don't know the beach area.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true.
So you come out of Nino's and you take a left. Now you're going down towards the street. You cross the street and there's a parking lot, and you keep on walking a little further. And then when you get, actually, they're tearing their building down right there now, so it's just that area right there. Saturday morning, they have a market there sometimes. That might help you, but that's pretty far away from you to go for a market. I understand.
Yeah,
So, okay, this is another way. Imagine yourself watching Billy, Peter's son, playing Frisbee. He's at the edge of Hummuston Park. He throws his Frisbee, a good toss, hucks it going west, and it hooks just a little bit to the left and lands. And now you're talking about that piece of property. Does that help?
Yes, that does.
Okay.
How did we wind up with that?
You know, it was the Frisbee that
That's a
brought it
long
into
story.
play.
We don't know.
Okay, so we have these 5 pieces of property. What's the fifth one?
The fifth one, the town of Indian River Shores is looking at surplusing, and they may have actually surplused it, north of CVS and Tracking Station Park. They own 2 parcels that one fronts A1A, one fronts a portion of the Tracking Station Park. If that went north, there's a triangle piece there that isn't wide enough for us to put any parking improvements on, which is why we kind of stopped where we did, I think. There's a agreement between the Shores and the county. We have first right to buy their land if we don't want to buy their portion. And again, I don't have the documents, but
yeah, we sold it to them. They didn't. We were going to develop it as a park, and they wanted us not to develop it as a park about 15 years ago. And they said they wanted to buy it, so we had it appraised. And Indian River Shores bought that piece to stop us expanding the park.
Right. I've heard different.
Is that the part you're talking about?
well, it's the north portion of Tracking Station Park where it creates a little triangle that runs north.
It runs. It's the parcel that abuts Tracking
I have
Station
enough of
Park
these.
to the north, and it runs all the way to A1A.
Peter?
Okay, and we own that?
No, we sold it to them. We owned it at one time, and Indian River Shores did not want us to expand the park, and we sold it to them.
So we own it or don't own it?
We own the triangle.
We own the triangle still because it could be the, I'm going to take a look at that. Commissioner Zork asked me about it. It could have something to do with the coastal setback line or the grant money that we went in with the state to purchase the tracking station land originally.
Okay, so I think I'm perfectly good with it, Commissioner Zork. It seems like we ought to just ask the staff to come back to us within a reasonable amount of time. Joe, how much time do you think you need?
On this, well, there's 3 different.
5 parcels.
A lot of it's legal. I give us 30 days. Give us 30 days at least to give you a report, an update.
That would be.
Okay, that 30 day, and you know, understand what we're doing. If this is just surplus land that we're never going to use, we ought to just
move it.
Probably get rid of it, but at least we'll get clarification on things like this triangular parcel. So we know, and I think all of us would like to know that.
And also on the piece north of Tracking Station Park, the Shores I believe, has ordered an appraisal for their piece. And Commissioner Davis, you could probably chime in on this. If you have.
This is the beach. He doesn't know where you're talking about.
I do too. I've met with Robbie Stabe on this.
If their property without beachfront access has one value, with beachfront access, I would think it has another value, that it could be a significant asset piece for us. It's very small to us, but in selling their pieces, it could bring an additional value to the table. And so we'll just have to procedurally figure out how to help quantify what that value might be.
Not necessarily with all of these parcels, but with some of them, I'd like to know, we customarily pay a high premium when we need to have land to stage equipment when we're doing projects. And has any of that land been used for such a purpose?
Yes, the tracking station, we've always used it. We used the tracking station after hurricane to stage a lot of our equipment through the piece that runs right next to
7-Eleven there.
Yeah, it's, what do you call it? The
FIT piece?
FIT piece. The one they keep up so beautiful. I get called on it every week.
They're doing better lately, Joe. Be nice.
But
They
this
have
is,
a ni- they have a very-
none of anything that Commissioner Zort's talking about, are you asking, do we store anything on that? No, that's basically undeveloped.
No, but customarily,
No, no,
when we're
we have to
staging
get-
equipment or we need access,
For beach
we pay such a
renourishment.
premium where it almost pays to buy the property. And we own, the citizens of Indian River County own the property. Is there any anticipated use or projected use that you would consider, Joe?
We'll have to look. We've got some concerns.
I'd just like you to consider that
There
as...
was a
as-
reason we kept it, and I cannot remember why, but there was a legitimate reason we had to keep that little triangle piece, and it's not big enough to build a house on, but we'll have to research it.
Right.
My mind is not the best on this.
Well, my concern is if the property is not going to be able to utilize on anybody's accord, yet we do have a periodic use for it, then I consider a moot point. But I'd just like you to consider that in your analysis and bring that back to us with your assessment as to what's the likelihood in selling the property or moving forward with taking excise property and dissolving it.
You know, I bet our new administrator will remember what we kept it for.
Yeah, this goes back.
You wanna call Jason now?
Back 15 or 20 years, and I'll have to take a minute to research it, but there was a legitimate reason we had to keep that, and I can't remember what it is.
And there might be that issue might have to be unraveled that may be time consuming, but I think at least let's start the digging, the research on it.
I know we tried to put the cell tower in the form of a pole, flagpole there, and we had to get, because the state helped us buy it, we had to get their permission. They wouldn't give us permission to put a flagpole.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, we think we've got pretty clear direction for our staff, which will evidently involve not just the legal department, but a few other departments in the county. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Sure didn't think it'd be till.